Welcome to the Non-Sequitur Show. Continual watching beyond this point may result in terminal face palming and a complete loss of wokeness. You have been warned.
All right, welcome to the NonSequitur Show. So this is going to be hopefully a little bit of an interesting topic because it's been something that I've wanted to do for a while. However, I'll get this right off the bat. I couldn't find anybody to debate me on this, believe it or not. Like literally for a week, I've been trying to get somebody to put their money where their mouth is and to actually, have a burden of proof that they claim that babies are atheists. I couldn't find anybody. I tried, and you saw me trying. I put it on many different social medias. So what I figured I would do is I would kind of make it an open panel and have people come in after the show starts. I do have two people kind of moderating here. I have Godless Girl.
Hey, what's up? It's weird you couldn't find anybody because when you make a text post about it, they come from everywhere to come say you're wrong.
Right. I don't get it either, right? You say, okay, look, put your money where your mouth is. Let's have a discussion or a debate. You can call it either one. I can call it a debate, but this is a discussion now because if it's a debate, we have to actually do debate. But this is a discussion. They wouldn't do it. They just absolutely wouldn't do it. And then I also have Christopher, whose mic is really loud, so be careful. Hey, Chris.
Hey, everybody.
There we go. Perfect. So they're going to be kind of helping to mod this because if people come in, I want them both to hold everybody's feet to the fire. Like, for example, not use fallacies, not use, very basic, sophistic type of argumentations. I know the Godless Girl has been around the GDC for a very, very long time. She's well familiar with argument and argumentation theory and knows when people are running sophistry and things of that nature. So, if somebody comes in, I really want them to actually, one, believe what they believe, that babies are born atheist, and two, argue from it, especially from a logical point of view, or at least a rational point of view that's more than just, oh, here's a dictionary, because that's not an argument. That's an instant fallacy right there called argumentum ad dictionarium. We can get into that later on, but that's not how I want to start. So what I figured I'd do this, and then let you guys join here in a second. I will start running through my argument so we don't waste too much time waiting for somebody that actually has the cojones to come in and try to argue that babies are atheist. But I'll be going through my arguments bit by bit. I was going to do a presentation and I decided, you know what, it's not worth the effort. If I'm not doing a formal debate, because I usually spend about 2 weeks preparing for a debate, then it's not worth my time to do a formal presentation. However, I want to put my arguments across why I make the claim that babies are not atheist, and I will meet my burden of proof in order to do that. I own my burden of proof. Anybody who doesn't have a burden of proof, in my opinion, cannot have a rational position. It's not possible. The burden of proof makes your position rational. And it's also known as a burden of justification in epistemology. So when atheists just say they don't have a burden of proof, they are literally telling people that their position is not rational. It could be irrational. It doesn't necessarily have to be irrational, but it's either irrational or irrational. It's a fetus type position or an atheist type position. It's based on what would be considered faith alone or be based upon something that's not rationalized. In order to have a position that is rational, that is what the burden of proof is for. Anybody who says otherwise, again, give me your evidence for it. I've waited a lot of years for people to give evidence for that, and I have never seen anything to the contrary. So, and I'll ask you too. I know Gigi's looked into this. Have you guys ever seen anywhere in any university teach that if you cannot rationalize your position and justify it, that your position is magically rational?
I mean, I'm not very familiar with what's taught in universities, but I talked to a lot of PhDs online, and they would all say that support what you're saying.
Yeah, I haven't met one that doesn't. Even I had an online debate, a written discussion over a period of a month that was formalized with Richard Carrier, who you know, and even he agreed that atheists have a burden of proof. It's just that his argument went one step further, and he argued that burden of proof had already been met, much like science, right? Science has a scientific theory, and they'll say that, look, this is the theory of evolution. The scientific burden of proof has already been met, and I agree with that. If you want to challenge a scientific theory, the onus is upon you to show that theory is wrong. It's already been met. The science has already been done. So the theory of evolution, the theory of gravity, germ theory, these are all things that have no burden of proof because it's already been met. I mean, I shouldn't say they have no burden of proof. I should say that they had a burden of proof. They met the burden of proof, and now it's on the other side to have a rebuttal to it. Fair?
I agree.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to put the link to join in the video description, and I'll pin it. Or it's not, I mean, it's in the live chat, and I'll pin it. I know there's somebody in there earlier that may wanted to join. I know that Godless Girl had put on her YouTube channel that we're doing this, so maybe somebody there wants to join. But like I said, I'm just going to start into this. So I wrote a blog. I write an epistemological blog, and I wrote in my 3am philosophy blogs, and I titled it, "The Only Thing We Can Safely Say About Babies and Rocks Are They're Not Theists, Not Atheists, and Not Agnostics." And there's a reason for all this. They are what Oppie would call innocent. And an innocent is somebody who is unaware of the proposition. They are unaware, right? They have never been able to evaluate something that they do not know about. George Smith would call them implicit atheist, which is a little bit confusing because in the literature, the term implicit atheist has been used more than one way. It has been used not just to represent somebody who is unaware of the proposition or has no position on the proposition, but also as synonymous with weak atheist, which is not the same thing. Weak atheist is somebody who does not believe. It doesn't have the epistemic qualification of being innocent, as the term implicit atheist was used by George Smith. So there's a little bit of confusion there. But the argument is going to be that when we're born tabula rasa. We are not born with any kind of beliefs toward any kind of God, or whether that God believes God exists or not. And so when an atheist argues, it's mostly atheists I see it. I don't think too many theists do it. But when an atheist argues that we're born atheists, they need to provide some evidence for that. And just appealing to a dictionary does not work, because a dictionary is descriptive. It is what's called sensu lato, meaning broad, and it's synchronic, meaning it is of the modern time. It is showing how the word is being used in the lexicon or lexical, how it is used today. Now, there's some what's called dialectic or diachronic dictionaries that shows how the word was used over time. But a synchronic dictionary shows you how the word is being used right now. And it is true. There are some atheists who use atheism as merely a lack of belief. Concede that point, absolutely. Doesn't mean that it's prescriptive. It's not prescribing that anybody who lacks a belief is an atheist. That's not how a dictionary works. So I had put it out there. I want to find somebody who can show by logical first principles that we are by necessity, and I mean global necessity, not just local necessity, but global necessity, that we are born atheists. And I have not had any single person able to do that yet. So let me run through a little bit. I'm not going to do the whole post here, but just the crux of the argument, and then see if anyone wants to come in and try to argue against that. Sound good? Awesome. All right. So I'll just go down to here because that's just basic. All right. So can you guys on the outside see this? I know it might be a little small because I am screen sharing it through StreamYards. And I could make it larger if I need to, but if you guys can see it just fine, let me know.
I mean, I can see it, but I'm straining to see it.
Okay. Let me fix my chat real quick. Because
and I'm on a big laptop too.
That's fine. All right, give me 1 second here. See if this refreshes the source there. Nope. How come I had a chat go out earlier, so I mean I have to somehow refresh cache. There we go. That did it. All right. Now I got my chat back. Let me see if I can make this larger. Is that better?
That's good.
All right. All right. Lady, that's funny. Boom. She says, I can see it, but it's smallish like my ex. That's harsh. All right. All right. So basically, this is, like I said, real simple logic. I don't ask anybody to make any really difficult logical proofs. Why? Because I'm not even competent enough to do that. I don't do first order logic much. I just do really basic first year sententional logic. Okay. This is first year logic. This is not something that's graduate level. This is not, anything that I've ever done at most was maybe maybe sophomore level, and I don't have any evidence for that, but I would say almost all of it's freshman level. And so this is intro level stuff. And so the law of negation basically states that something is either is or it is not the case. And it's always a tautology. It's always true. Okay, so it is the case or it is not the case. And then you have instantiation of that. And so if I throw in theist for that symbolic A or not A, right? So and you got to remember these are sets, right? So everything that's in set A is not in set not A. Everything that's in set not A is in set A. And if you think about it, that just makes sense. If you're an element of things that are a duck, you're not in the set of things that are not a duck. So if you instantiate this law of negation, you get theist or not theist. This is a simple negation for a contradiction. Or contradictory negation. So theist or not theist. Everything in the universe has to be one or the other. And this, again, is basic set theory, which I'll show down here. So you have what's called the universal set. And the universal set of things that of all, and we're not going to get into possible worlds or sets of possible worlds. Don't get that complicated. But just think of the universe as all the things that have an element in them. Okay, so everything that exists as some member of the universe U. In that universe U, you have a set and a complementary set. Okay, and X is either an element of one set or the other set. It cannot be both. It cannot be neither. They are mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive. So everything is either a duck or not a duck. Since the not theist set is a complementary set of the universal set, anything that's not in the set of duck is a not duck. So theists were the same thing. If you're not a theist, you're a not theist. Pretty simple so far, right? So the argument is pretty simple. From first principles, you can see that without any semantic substitutions, we are all born either theist or not theist. The argument would then go, which one are we born? Now, I will argue we are not theist, right? That I will argue, and even because I don't think babies are born with belief in God. A theist would argue, maybe, that a baby does believe in God. Romans, 1:18 to 21. I think that's BS, right? But that's something that's non-demonstrable by logic. What is demonstrable by logic is either we are born theist or not theist. That's demonstrable in logic. Anything beyond that is going to be some subjective evaluation of what you think our beliefs are. And if you think that a baby is born belief of God, I think that's irrational, or at least unjustifiable. But somebody could argue that. But my position is we are born without beliefs of God. Therefore, we are born as non-theist. So, if you decide to do with what a lot of atheists do or try to do, let me see if I can get that little. One sec. I can't. Okay. So what they try to do is they say, look, we believe that atheism and non-theism are the same terms. They're exactly the same. Which they're saying that if you're a member of atheist, you're also a member of non-theist. They're what's called a bijection between the two. They are the same logical equivalent sets. And what I mean by logical equivalent is that one is a proper set of the other, and the other is a proper subset of the other one. So if both of them are proper subsets of each other, they're considered what's called logically equivalent. So every single element in one set for atheists are the set of non-theist, according to them, when they say that they are the exact same thing. Okay? This is where it gets into the Aron Ra argument. Aron Ra, who, again, I'm going to tell you, I have a lot of respect for Aron in his biology, but in philosophy, he's horrific. And this is one of the reasons why he's horrible. Because of this logic, which he does, I think, understand, I think he gets this, is why he argues the way he does, it necessitates, on a local level, not global, but local, that rocks are atheist and babies are atheist. This is where new atheists, TM, come at the argument, and they say, well, we're born atheists, because this is what they're doing. They're just doing semantic substitution. And they're saying anything that's in the set of non-theist are also the set of atheism, when that's not how it ever was taught in philosophy. Atheism is a subset, proper subset of non-theism. All atheists are non-theists, but not all non-theists are atheists. So if you say, though, atheism and non-theism are the exact same thing, then it's not truth-preserving in a proposition involving one or the other, because they're not meaning the same thing. Somebody could say, like, for example, I am a non-theist. That is a true statement. I am not an atheist. So I am a non-theist. But if I change non-theist to atheist, it becomes I am an atheist. Now that statement is no longer true. It's called truth preserving. It's considered what's called to be opaque. There's an opacity to it. It blocks that word substitution because it has changed the truth value of that proposition. So if you look at the logic, this is basic, very first order logic. If all rocks are non-theist, which again, all things start from non-theist or theist, right? I don't think anybody's going to argue rocks are theist, right? Even Aron wouldn't argue that, right? Which is, by the way, if you think it's silly to say rocks and babies are born theist, you literally, in my mind, are just as equally irrational to think that babies are born atheist. There's no difference. To me, there's no difference. If you're going to argue that rocks are atheist, then a theist comes along and says rocks are theist, and you think they're out to lunch. That's how I look at both of them. There's no difference in the arguments. One's just arguing the positive, one's just arguing the contrary, the negation. That's it. But if you think it's silly to say rocks are theist, I think you're epistemically beholden to think it's silly to say rocks are atheist. But that's a subjective evaluation. So if rocks are all non-theist, and now I say all non-theists are atheist, then all rocks are atheist. This is by first order logic for a syllogism. Okay? And this is a standard syllogism. It's valid. It's sound. If you say all rocks are non-theists because everything that's in the set of theists are in the non-theist, or sorry, all the set of non-theists are an atheist, then all non-theists are atheists, which is not true, but it follows from logical necessity. Then all rocks are atheist, which again follows by logical necessity. This is why Aron does argue that rocks are atheist, because it follows from local logical necessity. If you formulate the argument from what's called I call a semantic substitution, and merely just arbitrarily say non-theist is now represented by the word atheist. And there's many other reasons why you shouldn't do that. Many other reasons. But this is a primary reason because it does go into these weird absurdities, I think, then having to say that babies and rocks are atheists. My argument is we're not born atheists because you shouldn't do this arbitrary substitution, because you could do it with anything. You can say theist or dog. Dog just means not theist. Okay, but that's silly. Well, okay, it's no more silly than saying non-theist is atheist. They're two different sets of things. And so a baby who's born innocent would not be rationally described as either theist or atheist. And also, before I allow anybody to come in, I don't see anybody in the background, but in case anybody does, let me know. If you have a problem with Christians labeling their kids something, like, for example, my child is Catholic or my child is Baptist, and they're, a baby, infant baptism, which makes no sense to me. If you think it's inappropriate to assign a label to a child who's not even capable of formulating their own beliefs, and I'm not talking about cultural. Some people can say, like, Jewish is cultural, so my children are Jewish. I get that, but I'm talking about Christianity isn't more than just cultural, especially Catholic or Baptist. My child's a Baptist. If you find that to be indoctrination, then that is no different than calling your child an atheist. They have not evaluated the proposition to their own satisfaction, to where they're going to take on the label that they want in correspondence with the position or epistemic disposition that they hold. And if you think that's silly, then you are just being hypocritical. Personally, I don't think that parents should ascribe a label to their children. I think that is a form of indoctrination. That child has no idea whether they're Baptist or not. They have no idea whether they believe the same things that you believe. Let them decide on their own. And there's no difference for atheism. So that's my one of my arguments in a nutshell. There's many more, but we'll wait till if people come in. But so far, Goddess and Chris, have I said anything to you that seems either one, illogical or irrational?
No, but I mean, I could make a very technical point. It's about what you said, but it's kind of sidestepping the whole issue. But I guess I actually do agree with something you said is false. Because when you said it's a dichotomy, either you're a theist or not a theist, and you use the example of a duck, there's going to be hypotheticals where there's no fact of the matter, just like with chairs. Like, what is a chair? There's no essential or property of a chair.
Sure. Yeah. If I assume these are all truth apt, though, I assume that they're cognitively meaningful. I think I even said cognitively at the beginning.
No, it could, like a chair and a duck are cognitively meaningful, but there's going to, and so is a god, but there's going to be cases where, like, what if somebody believes in a demigod? Are they theist or non-theist?
Well,
you know, it's
well, hang on though. It's not cognitive. If I say a chair believes something, it's not a cognitively meaningful statement, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I think we're not. I think we're misunderstanding each other. When you say somebody either believes this object is a chair or not a chair, or a duck or not a duck, or a god or not a god, there's going to be cases where there's no fact of the matter. So, like, what if somebody believes in a demigod?
Well, I think there is a fact of the matter, but okay, so that goes into classification. I tend to argue from non-classical theism, okay? But classical theism would not put that under theist, right? So when I say theist, if you look in my blog, I make it very clear. When I use the term theist, I use it very globally for any type of god, okay? Even a demigod. Any kind of supernatural deity that has some kind of supernatural powers or can manipulate or change the laws of nature or suspend them, I'm going to put under theism because it's just a simple approach, right? But that gets into, like, again, what scheme are you working in? But to me, that's kind of, it's still, no matter what it is, however you want to describe theism, is still you're theist or not theist, right? Then you go, okay, what do you mean by theist? That's fine. I'm meaning a non-classical theist approach. Because under the non-classical theist, a deist would be a theist. Under a classical approach, though, deism would obviously not fall into theism because theism is personalized. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that's a good clarification.
So, yeah, and then I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said then. And what's really ridiculous about calling a baby an atheist, you could maybe even argue it's even more ridiculous to call, like, a non-cognitivist an atheist.
Yeah.
Because when you ask them, are you an atheist? They're going to say, I don't understand your question.
Yeah. And by the way, that's a very technical point. And I figured somebody come in, maybe they might run that. But the thing with the theological cognitivist, in order to apprehend what the theological cognitivist or ichtheist is saying, you have to at least, one, recognize that they are not going to be, to them, a theist or not theist, right? The only way you can put them in theist or non-theist is by having a higher epistemic vantage point. And you have to, like, go, okay, they're still a theist or non-theist, but to them, they're neither, because neither of them are cognitively meaningful, right? It's to be like, you know, verbal, I'm your favorite person, Matt Dillahunty, because I know you worship him. Matt Dillahunty would say verbal gerbil or whatever he says. Either you're verbal gerbil or you're not verbal gerbil. Okay, that's true, but nobody knows what verbal gerbil even is, right? So to the theological non-cognitivists, they're like, I don't even know what a theist or non-theist even is. I don't know what any of these terms mean. The God talk is meaningless, but they are either in one or the other if it's cognitively meaningful. And this is why I preference that it has to be cognitively meaningful in order to be a not, or it's still logically negated, right? This or that. But in order to be a set that has any kind of real ability to have members, then yeah, it has to have some kind of cognitive meaning too. I personally think, so a theological cognitivist, sure, to them, they're not a theist, they're not a not theist. Those terms mean nothing to them. But for somebody like myself, I because it's strict classical logic, you would have to say, well, they don't believe in God. Therefore, put them in a non-theist. But they're going to be like, okay, but I don't know what that set means. But if you want to put me in it, whatever, I guess, you'd have to find a theological cognitivist to find out what they're going to argue for that. But I also hold that also all ichtheists, all theological non-cognitivists are ichtheists, but not all ichtheists are theological cognitivists. And that's my own personal opinion. I could change that. The only reason I think that, Gigi, and I'll get your opinion on it, is that the ichtheist holds that all God talk is cognitively meaningless, which to me implies, but doesn't explicitly state, propositions. The theological non-cognitivist expressly and explicitly says that any proposition with God talk is not truth apt. So to me, the ichtheist implies theological cognitivism, but doesn't necessarily logically entail it. It's an epistemic, maybe, implication.
Yeah, well, I don't think a non-cognitivist would necessarily be like, I don't know what you mean when you say I'm a non-theist, because they do understand that there's people who believe theism is a proposition and believe that proposition is true. So just like I'm a moral non-cognitivist, so I don't think that moral propositions are, or I don't think that moral statements are actually propositions. They're not truth apps.
Yeah.
But I understand that there's moral realists, right?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. But the thing is that I think I think the theological cognitivist really doesn't understand the cognitive meanings of the words. To them, like they don't know. When you say theist, they're like, I don't even understand what's that meaning. Moral non-cognitivism is a different approach, because moral non-cognitivism says that a proposition has no truth value because of some other way of describing moral theory, like prescriptivism or emotivism or expressivism. These are all different ways of trying to relate morals to something, rather than saying, hey, this statement, stealing is wrong, is true or false. You still think there's cognitive meaning to those words. You just think that the proposition is not truth apt. It cannot be true or false. The theological economist doesn't get that far. The way I infer from it, they don't even know what the proposition is even arguing. They don't know. When you say God exists, they're like, what does that even mean? Rather than it just doesn't have a truth value. That's how I interpret it. Again, I haven't had a discussion with a theological cognitivist in a very long time. And I used to identify as what was called a partial theological cognitivist, because I still was like, what do they mean? What are they asking for? And I was refining my schema of what I meant by God when they mean by God when you ask the question, does God exist? So that's what I was meaning by it. But after, years and years, I'm like, okay, I got a framework I can work with now. And then I think that anybody who's a full theological cognitivist, I think they're kind of, I don't know. I don't say I can be a full theological cognitivist. Like you said, most people understand what is meant by, God, does God exist? I mean, most people, I think. So
yeah, but I think it would be absolutely ridiculous for like our Aron Ra fan to come along and tell a non-cognitivist you're an atheist, and the non-cognitivist is like, I agree, I don't know what you mean, and then the Aron Ra fan is like, it doesn't matter, I know what you are and you don't know what you are.
And it's funny, these are the ones arguing don't misuse pronouns, right? Don't mislabel my pronoun, but they're happy to call people an atheist when they're not. When a Aron Ra fan, and again, I'm talking about these philosophy people, because again, I have a lot of respect for Aron in his biology. I think he has some issues, but minor stuff. But philosophy is just not his jam. And so when somebody says, "Hey, Steve, you're an atheist," they're insulting. They are not going by any kind of standard formal usages, and they're certainly not respecting me as an individual to decide for myself what theological or philosophical positions I have. And that, to me, I think is disturbing. If you go around telling somebody that there's something that they're not, you are being dishonest. You're not being a morally good person at that point. If somebody wants to be labeled something, I don't care. If you say, look, I believe that God I believe that God exists, but I want to be called an atheist. Okay, whatever. I'll call your square circle. I don't care. That's my arguments against the term agnostic atheist, right? Because I think it's nonsensical. But if you want to use it, knock yourself out. But can you justify to me the usage using logic and reason? No. They can't. They never do. Not once. I had people try, but they failed.
Ponzer is asking in the text chat. So he's this guy that showed up in a post I made about Aron Ra. And I made a post about if you combine Aron Ra, like I'm sure there's Aron Ra and T-Jump fans out there that think both of them are right about rocks. So they think rocks are immoral atheists.
Wait. T-Jump thinks rocks are, well, I think T-Jump will probably say that rocks are immoral, but he wouldn't say rocks are atheists, would he?
No, I'm saying I'm sure that there's some people that are both Aron Ra and T-Jump fans and think they're both right. So those people think rocks are immoral atheists. Yeah,
that's weird. I mean, if somebody's going to argue that rocks are immoral atheists, I'm going to have one hell of a justification to even remotely consider why that would actually be a justifiable position.
Well, only some rocks, the ones that impose on your will.
Yeah, the ones that voluntarily impose on your imposition of will. But that's a good point.
Ponzer is asking, what's an atheist again? So what's your exact definition of atheist?
All right, so let me run it through this way. And I'm not trying to obfuscate. I just want to make sure I'm very clear, so people do understand. Because when people argue with me, they seem to willfully try to strawman me, and I don't get it. Definitions for a polysemous word are going to be descriptive. They're not going to be prescriptive. And what that means is that these words describe usages. They don't prescribe you how a word is going to be used. A prescription would be more along the lines of, if it meets these conditions, then is this word. If it is a polygon with 4 right angles, interior right angles, and 4 sides of equal length, we're going to call that a square. Okay, that's a prescribed definition. If you want to say that a arid region of land that gets less than 10 inches of rain a year, we're going to call a desert. Those are prescribed usages. But a dictionary just describes, it doesn't prescribe. It will say, a desert is a place that gets low rainfall. That's just describing it. So there's a difference between a description and a prescription. So when you're asking what an atheist is, there's two things. One, there's a description of an atheist, and there's a more of a, I don't hate to use, it's not even prescribed, but general ought to be used if you want to do philosophy in any kind of high level way, because this is what they use in philosophy. So if you ask what an atheist is, in philosophy, it is standard. And this is a fact. You can go look this up. I mean, everybody who's ever looked this up in any kind of in any kind of honesty has realized this. Okay. Rationality Rules went to school and learned this. Cosmic Skeptic finally learned this. They all realize this. This is how it's taught in school, in university. The standard usage of the term atheist is the belief that God does not exist, or the belief that the proposition of theism is false, or the claim that God doesn't exist, or the theory that God does not exist, or the dogma that God does not exist. Those are all kind of, they're similar, not exactly the same thing, or the assertion that God does not exist. There's minor variances between those terms, but ostensibly, let's just consider them to be the same for right now. So that's how it's used. If you go to a course, that's how it's going to be understood. And the reason it's only even understood differently is because of Anthony Flew in 1971 wrote a paper called The Presumption of Atheism, where he advocated that people started using it in the negative case, as in the I do not believe, rather than the positive case, which is I believe. This was not well received. As a matter of fact, very few people at the time really took note of it and really didn't like the argument. And even Michael Martin, who was a doctor of philosophy that was a contemporary Flew, had some issues with it. And he, even though he did take on the usage, even he thought it was poorly argued. But so when you ask what an atheist is, I go by somebody who holds that there is no God, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you have to ascribe yourself to those usages, right? You can use any usage you want, but then you have to rationalize to me why you're using a weaker usage. Why are you using a less precise usage? Because there's hypocrisy there. If you are going to be going against a creationist and say, well, you can't use theory as guess. You can't use evolution as change. Well, why not? That's how the dictionary is. Because that's not how we use them in science. Well, we're not talking about science. We're in a Facebook group. It's the same argument they say. Well, we're not in a classroom. We're in a Facebook group. So that means that you're just not using precise terms. But that doesn't mean that what I'm using is not precise, right? So what is an atheist? Like I said, I just use standard usages, and that's the belief that God does not exist. And atheism is the belief that God does not exist. How's that? That work? And by the way, we have room for 2 people, because I'm screen sharing.
Is there anyone in the queue?
Nope.
Oh.
Nope. Nobody wants to take me on. I've given people opportunities. It's like, here, I'm right here. Everybody, whoever says I'm wrong, come at me. This is, like I said, I've got much more in my toolbox here. But go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a bizarre phenomenon that they only want to be in text. The Aron Ra people. But Ponzer asked, I don't know what understand his question. He said, "What is a polygon? He said is a polygon prescriptive or descriptive? Do you have any idea what he's talking about?"
Well, polygon is a shape, is a geometric shape, right? So a rhombus, a rectangle, a square, octagon. These are all polygons. It means poly means multiple, right? So sides, so multiple sides. So a four-sided polygon with 4 equal lengths that have 4 interior right angles, in mathematics, they will prescribe that to be a square. But a two-dimensional four-sided object does describe a square. It's not fully, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient, right? If I say a square is a two-dimensional four-sided object, that's not false. That describes a square, but it doesn't prescribe to where if it meets those conditions, it must be a square, because obviously it doesn't have sufficiency conditions. I'm losing my lighting here, so I apologize for my background, whatever, though. Nobody cares. But that's why it's the difference between prescription and description. If I say an atheist, if a dictionary, by the way, which have only been changed recently in the last decade or two, dictionaries are coming around to change usages, because these late atheists are using atheism in a non-typical way. So it reflects that usage. I get that. But the statement, someone who believes God does not exist or does not believe God does exist, first of all, that's called a inclusive or, right? That's a disjunction. That only describes an atheist. That does describe an atheist, right? All atheists in philosophy meet both those conditions, right? But it's not an either or, right? It's in philosophy, those two conditions both do describe an atheist. You know, and an atheist would be described in the negation. A theist is somebody who believes there's a God or lacks a belief that there's not a God. It's the same thing. If you accept one, I believe you're epistemically committed to accept the other one. And so if you don't, that's special pleading. That's what's called I call my WASP argument. And the people that argue one usage when they don't allow the other one, the hypothetical is, okay, if theists started using theist to mean somebody who believes that God exists or does not believe God does not exist, and the lexicons start showing that usage, if it becomes part of the lexicon of English, and 50 years from now, when you say the word theist, it means either somebody who believes in God or does not believe that God does not exist. They have to accept that, or that is special pleading. And if they don't, then they're not being, I think, intellectually honest. By the way, Chris, being quiet, what do you got to add? Is that all good so far?
Chris, what are you thinking?
Okay.
Oh, he said 1 minute.
So does anybody in the live chat, we got anybody that wants, again, nobody wants to challenge me on this. I'm just blown away. Everybody's like, oh, Steve's so wrong in this. I'm like, okay, show me the evidence. I just showed you logic. That's evidence. And by the way, evidence does not have to mean empirical evidence. Evidence can be a logical argument. In fact, I think that's the most purest form of evidence, but whatever. Chris?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. So yeah, a couple of things. So number one, the whole thing about how Aron Ra will go around and tell people whether they're an atheist or not, or assert rather that, like, let's say you are an atheist. It's kind of akin to me to whenever Christians go around saying, well, you actually believe in God, but you suppress the truth in unrighteousness. It is the exact same thing.
Exactly the same thing.
In my mind, I don't see how it's not. I kind of forgot what the other thing. Oh, yes, and I think there's actually a lot of theists like to point out that the colloquial usage that people are using for the atheism in the negative case, they'll say that, basically, you're trying to escape the burden of proof and pin it all on us. So I think there's something to that. I think they're kind of pointing out something right there. And I think it's really, because I've talked to people who will say things like that. It's all the burden of proof is on them. It's all on them. It's all on the theist. They're making the positive assertion and all this. I don't think we have to do that. I don't think that as atheists we have to give up the, what I consider to be the proper definition of atheism, just because, a burden of proof takes some work.
Yeah. But they're scared to. They're scared to.
Yeah.
They don't want to take on that burden because they don't know how to justify their own beliefs, I think.
That was beautifully said, Chris.
I love that. That was good.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And just real quick, it's really this easy. If somebody just, this is how you can just get started anyway, and then do the work from there. But there's 4 primary reasons why I believe that there are no gods. Number one, it follows from my naturalism. I believe that natural reality exhausts causal reality. All right. So the second one would be the problem of evil. And if you talk to Ben Watkins, the logical problem of evil isn't dead. Now, I saved his argument for that on my phone, but I, saved it and then totally forgot about it.
Does he invoke Plantinga's theodicy?
I don't know.
I think he does.
Like I said, I saved it to my phone and then I didn't look at it later, so because I forgot about it. And then but there's also the evidential problem of evil. And then also another thing is divine hiddenness. I think that should not. I think that that's another good reason. The third one is the problem of religious confusion. Let's say I were to become religious. Well, at that point, which God do I believe in? And if it is the Christian God, which set of beliefs do I take on? And it's just because, whereas one person may say, well, you can't lose your salvation after you have it. And they'll point to you to all these different verses that say that to back that up. The next thing, which is what I used to believe, was that you could lose your salvation. And then, so as you can see, we now have this dichotomy, this thing where, you know, you have these two separate contradictory beliefs is what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, which of these two is right and how do I tell? You know, so, and those are the kind of fights that go on until the end of time. And so it's just, so you can go into any one of those. And I think those 4 reasons just by themselves. I mean, those aren't the only reasons, but they're the heavy hitters in my view as to why I'm an atheist. So,
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Matter of fact, you know as well as I do, those are the same reasons I use to be agnostic. But
except for, of course, the natural, because you can't do that.
Right, correct. Yeah, well, methodological, but yeah, no, point taken.
Yeah, well, yes, of course, but I'm talking about, you know,
point
metaphysical.
Taken. Matter of fact, I even argued that same thing. I argued years ago that all ontological or metaphysical naturalists epistemically are committed to atheism, and you would be amazed how many people had pushback on that. I'm like, you're serious? Really? Mm-hmm. How does that not epistemically commit you to atheism? But anyways, yeah. And so what Chris just did is a perfect example of what's called meeting your burden of proof. He justified his reasoning by solid argumentation and reason by inductive argumentation. He's not claiming that he can have a deductive argument there is no God. I don't think such a thing can be proven. I believe that you can have a valid and sound argument that proves God or disproves God. The problem is we don't know which one it is. I can make two arguments. One of them must be valid and sound. I just don't know which one it is. Therefore, it's not a proof.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that I don't. Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing. People think that when you say that there are no gods or there's no such thing as a supernatural, they're almost acting as though it's an absolute statement. That's not the case. I just simply believe that naturalism is the inference to the best explanation. And so, you know, from everything I can infer, I don't see, you know, I think that naturalism just makes the most sense.
And that's one of the best ways to do burden of proof is because if you hold naturalism, you're appealing to theoretical virtues too, and which is an oppie argument. And so you're basically saying, what is the best explanation? Well, it's going to be naturalism because that's what we observe. And that does, I think, epistemically commit you to atheism. So it's perfectly fine to argue there's no God and come from a naturalistic viewpoint. There's nothing wrong with that. Because again, these are not claims to absolute certainty. These are your dosastic states. What you convinced by.
I could be wrong. Yeah. I could definitely be wrong. Like, for example, let's say I like to do this kind of thing. I'll give you 2 things that would definitely, pretty much in my mind, disprove naturalism for me. All right, this is what would do it. So let's say, so I'm an atheistic Satanist. Now let's say I get into a ritual, and let's say that I'm summoning some demon just for shits and giggles because I think that'd be cool, and well, let's say that next thing I know, I get dragged by the feet by an unseen force at least 3 feet across the room. I would think that would be sufficient for me to say, oh, okay, I think I better reevaluate this whole naturalism thing.
That'd be cool as shit. Get it on camera. Get it on camera.
I know. Well, camera just won't do it for you because you could always say he's bullshitting, he's editing, he's this, that, and the other. I think that if naturalism is gonna be disproven for me, I think it really is gonna take an experience for me.
I absolutely agree. And I had some weird experiences. I'm not gonna front. We'll get into that another time. But I've had some weird experiences that I cannot just explain. But it doesn't get me to God. It just gets me to something that we don't. There may be things we just don't fully know about and understand. At most.
Yeah, I don't think that
experience natural. You don't think it would?
I would think it would be more likely that you're just like hallucinating or something than.
Oh, if you got bruised and you had to go to the hospital, that's.
Well, I disagree. I mean, I wouldn't be hallucinating if I'm physically pulled from one end of the room to the other. How would I be hallucinating?
Yeah, I mean that's a physical manifestation.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think that would be good enough for me.
Yeah.
I think that it would be more. I think at that point, the Hume's argument for, let's say, miracles. I think that it would be more ridiculous to say. It would be less likely that I'm hallucinating than that I was actually dragged across the room.
Right, I agree.
In that case, which would, of course, be a defeater for naturalism. So. And then another thing would be, now I think it would be more plausible. You could say that if, like, let's say I had a Ouija board.
I mess with those. They'll mess with your head, man.
I have one. It's for my aesthetic and my temple.
They'll mess with your head.
Now, if I if I had a Ouija board and I wasn't touching it, but I was calling out to these unseen forces, and the thing starts moving wildly across the board, I guess I could be hallucinating, but I don't know. I just still feel like that would be because something
I've never
physical
seen
is
that,
happening. You know what I'm saying? Like a physical thing.
I used a
I've
Ouija
never
board.
seen that, but I'm just saying.
I've used a Ouija board for
That would be
years,
cool.
and I've never seen it move on its own. If I've ever seen one move on its own, I would have to seriously even reconsider things.
That's what I'm saying.
But I've never
right?
seen that.
That was my second example.
Yeah, I've used it by myself, which is trippy enough, but I've never seen it without me touching it move. But yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. You would have to evaluate. And again, we'll do a stream one of these days on belief reevaluations. There's a whole theory on belief reforms and how you should reevaluate and when you should change your position when somebody what's called they either undermine your argument or they do a rebuttal to your argument. There's a difference. If I do a rebuttal to your argument, it's not as powerful doing as undercutting your argument, because undercutting your argument, it goes to your foundations of your belief. For example, when I debated Wayne, I not just rebuked his arguments and did a rebuttal, I undercut his arguments and he changed his position because I shook him to the foundations. And so in order for me to change my position, I need that kind of undercutting. If you're going to show that my argument's wrong, you need to undercut my argument, not just have a rebuttal, because I can assail rebuttals. An undercutting of my argument would be much more impossible for me to epistemically not change my position. And so that's what I've been looking for. And I can't find it by anybody. Nobody's been able to show me why what I've been saying for years is wrong. Nobody. And everybody knows I know professionals and PhDs in these topics. This is just first year stuff. Even there, they're going to be like, yeah, this is trivial to them, right? It's not that complicated. Mm-hmm. That's why they don't bother with it, because they're like, yeah, this is like okay, Steve's teaching basic, like if I was doing math, it would be equivalent to arithmetic. It's on that level, basic arithmetic. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, 1 + 1 = 2. Good job, Steve. So yeah, they don't get involved with it too much. But I have people that are arguing to me the same thing, that this is wrong, which would be akin to me, them arguing to me 1 + 1 = 2 is wrong. And by the way, I have people argue to me math is wrong sometimes, and that's like, what? How does that work? But again, here I am trying to get people to show that their argument that babies are atheists, and yet nobody has so far. Has anybody, you see anybody in the live chat want to come in? Has anybody seen any post that have logically showed that by necessity, rocks are atheists? And by the way, you kind of would have to use modal logic for that, maybe. But let me show you this real quick so you guys can see this, right? It just starts off. You can do it by a very simple argument. A or not A by law of excluding middle. Theist or not theist. And I should put a hyphen in there, but whatever. Theist or not theist by instantiation. Rocks are not theist by assertion. Not theist equals atheist by assertion. This is by the way, this is the lack belief argument. Rocks are atheist. Conclusion. How does this not logically follow? Do you see anybody see?
Yeah, it does, but they're gonna have trouble. They're gonna have trouble to argue for number 4.
Right. 4 is right. 4 is the why this is not sound. Because what you're doing is you're just doing a semantic substitution. It's logically valid, but I would question premise 4 because you're just arbitrarily saying not theist or atheist. I can put any word there. I can say not theist equals dog. Rocks are dogs. That's all you're doing.
You know what a theist could do is a theist could change it to a theist is anyone who is not theist.
Well, yeah,
not theists are atheists.
But here's the thing with that. I just wrote something up on that. I don't know if you saw it, but I was trying to explain the difference between a contrary negation and a contradictory negation. Because I call this one of the Aron Ra fallacies. Because Aron Ra doesn't understand double negation. He doesn't understand there's more than just a contrary negation, or a contradictory negation. There was called contrary negations. And a contrary negation, he cannot wrap his head around because he thinks that theist and atheism is a logical, strict dichotomy that is both mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive. And the problem with that is he will never be able to understand contrary negations. If I say not hot, where not is affixed or prefixed to hot, then it is the same as hot by double negation in classical logic. In intuitionist logic, there's a little bit different way you do double negations. It only works one way. I can say hot equals not hot, but I can't say not hot equals hot. You can't derive it that way. The reason for that is because of contrary negations. If I say not hot, in grammar, everybody's learned if you have two negations, they cancel each other out. So not hot, when there's no affixing of the prefix, is hot in classical logic, or in grammar. That's what we tend to think. But that's not how it actually is in grammar, because not hot doesn't necessarily mean hot, it could mean warm, because the contrary to hot is cold, and cold and warm are both not hot. And so you don't know if it was, you don't know what the contrary was, or if it was hot or warm in order to get you to hot, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't, because you would have to see the logic. But there's a difference between what's called a contranegation and a contradictory negation. So in grammar or in intuitionist logic, you cannot say not hot equals hot. It doesn't work that way. There's no rule of inference like that, because it could be the contrary of warm. And the same thing goes for, like, theist. If you're not theist, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a theist. You could be agnostic, because an agnostic is. Does it kind of make sense what a contrary is? A contrary is something that are not mutually exclusive. Hot and cold are contraries, right? If you're hot, you're not cold. If you're cold, you're not hot. Both of them can't be true, but both of them can be false. You can be warm. Warm is neither of those. Those are what's called contraries. So same thing happens with the typical schema for atheism. You have theist and atheist are contraries as far as your beliefs, not ontologically, but beliefs. I can believe God exists, I can believe God does not exist, or I can believe neither, which is agnostic or the contraries. This is what I put in my paper for the semiotic square of opposition, which, again, nobody's refuted. But you want to hear something, Godless? You want to hear something funny?
What's up?
I had not too long ago updated something on my paper, right? A typo, a grammatical error, just a spelling error or something, right? And when I did that, something else messed up in my paper that I wasn't aware of. Okay, because you can re-upload your paper, right? And so somebody recently, the other day, found an error in the logic, believe it or not. It wasn't catastrophic. It was just, I missed a symbol. But he knew logic, and he recognized that I missed the entailment.
Yeah, dude, that was cool.
Yeah.
Oh, so did you upload it again?
Yes, I fixed it already. And as soon as he said, "Hey, you missed the turnstile symbol for entails," I looked at I was like, "How? What?" And I looked at it and I was like, "Jam, Mofo is right." And so I fixed it. There was no argument.
Hey,
that's
Steve,
that's why it's objective. But go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Now, you know what's kind of funny about that? I just now thought of this, and I hope I'm not out of line for saying it, but it's kind of funny that, like, the people who read your paper, the degree holders that read your paper, they didn't catch that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think because I'm pretty sure it wasn't in my originals. I think what happened when I re-uploaded it, that spelling error, then that some reason that part got something happened there. Because the reason I think that is because in the abstract, I quote Oppie verbatim, and there was two errors that crept in there too for spelling errors that I must have just mindlessly clicked on, and because it should have read something like atheist or theist, and it read atheism and not and theism, which wouldn't make much sense, and so I had to change it back to the original quote, and so there was errors that crept in on my last upload. So that's what I'm assuming happened, because I literally got those right off Dr. Demi's work. So it just proves, though, if you read my paper carefully enough and you know logic, you can find an error if there's an error. As you said, though, the people that know logic didn't find any errors. Dr. Demi didn't find any errors. Dr. Pai, who's doing a public thing on it, a review, he didn't find any errors. Landon didn't find any errors. And even then, it wasn't a critical error, right? It wasn't like the logic was wrong. It just, there's a symbol that was missing. And again, I don't know how the hell it vanished. But this is what I'm saying. By the people that know the topics, they should be able to go, "Hey, yeah, Steve's this is all screwed up. He's absolutely wrong on this." Okay, show me. None have. So why is it when people say my paper's word salad, yet you say, "Well, how is it word salad if 2,000 people have read this? It's in the top 1%. Multiple people that know the topic have read it. Nobody I found that has any kind of education in this has disagreed with it. Not one. Not a single freaking one. Not one. So why is that? And people say, "Well, Steve, you're appealing to authority." No. An appeal to authority is when you say my paper is true because somebody agrees with my paper. An expert agrees with my paper. That's fallacious. But if a body of evidence is strong enough where a substantial amount of people that know the topic agree with you, that buttresses your argument to at least be confident enough that your paper is good, right? That's a confidence level. This is how belief revisionism works. If for example, Chris, you see you had a belief, and 10 flat earthers agreed with you, and 10 PhDs in physics, this was a physics question, disagreed with you, will you be rationally justified to go with the flat earthers? Well, clearly not, right? You would have to go, okay, there's probably something here that I'm missing. Your belief revisionism would have to go where you have experts telling you you're wrong, and then you have people that don't know what the hell they're talking about telling you you're wrong. Which one are you going to generally believe, right?
Yeah, because in my mind it would be that, these people, when you get a PhD, it takes a long-ass time to get a PhD from what I've heard. And, you spend all this time getting this PhD, and we're talking about you're not being a slacker. I mean, you're not just sitting there like, playing hooky from college when you've actually obtained your PhD. I mean, you've been putting in hard work, you've been studying, you've been proving things yourself. You have to offer up your own thesis on something. And for me to now say that those credentials are now dwarfed by some mental dwarf is just, to me, that's just unthinkable.
It's ludicrous.
I just can't. My mind would not be able to accept that.
And that's what's funny, because Matt Dillahunty was dishonest when he said why he blocked me. I put a Facebook post on, and I was very clear on this. I was very clear that I'm not degrading anybody's job. Right? I mean, I work in a regular job, right? I mean, nothing spectacular by any means. It's just I do loss prevention. I mean, it is a I think a $14 million store, but it's still loss prevention, right? I don't work for NASA or something. I'm not a rocket scientist. But my argument on Facebook was, if I have 10 people with PhDs telling me that they can't find any errors, and I have 10 people who work driving a bus, which one is going to give me more confidence? That was my argument, and I wasn't degrading driving a bus, right? That wasn't the argument. I'm just saying, I was saying to the people, why is it the experts are not finding error, and yet you have these people that don't even know basic stuff telling me I'm wrong? That was the argument. And Matt dishonestly tried to tell people, oh, Steve was, dissing on people for working at Walmart or something. I'm like, no, it wasn't. I worked at Kmart. So what?
Oh man.
Yeah. So he was dishonest about that, because that's not what I was doing. Like I said, I worked for Kmart. Who the hell am I to talk about that?
That's silly.
This was years ago. This was like 25, 30 years ago, whatever it was.
So real quick, I think there's a question for me in the chat. It says, as a naturalist, how would you address the God of Spinoza? Although it seems like a very weak case for deism, it also seems to be unfalsifiable to hold a positive case that this God doesn't exist. Okay, so I'm just gonna answer that pretty simply, and it goes like this. All right, so with naturalism, again, it means that natural reality exhausts causal reality. All right, from that, you wouldn't have, any kind of supernatural gods. It's also, and with naturalism, what you have is sufficient explanatory power with less, so it's simpler. And so when you have that kind of explanatory power with less, then to pose even a deistic God would be to add to our ontology something that's unnecessary. And so because of that, the fact that it's unnecessary, and you can apply Occam's razor here, you would get rid of that unnecessary thing, and thus no deistic God or gods of any kind.
I like that. And can I add on that, though? Falsifiability is not a big thing to me. It really isn't. People put way much stock in that.
There's that too, yeah.
Yeah, because
I would actually. Can you explain that more to me?
Yeah, okay. Let me try this. I believe that we're not going to be struck by a comet tomorrow. I have no way to falsify that. Now, there's a falsification condition that if we get struck by a comet, then I was wrong. But for all practical purposes, there's nothing I can do to falsify that belief, right? It's unfalsifiable practically. Okay, sure. But I'm justified to believe that we're not going to have a comet hit us tomorrow. Why? Because if a comet was on its way, probably somebody would have noticed by now, right? So falsifiability is a theoretical virtue that's, I think, nice to have. I think some scientists like it. They take Popper's falsificationism, but I don't think it's the be-all, end-all by any means for rationalization of a belief. It's more for a more robust scientific theory. It's a virtue of scientific theory. But I don't think falsification has any really importance when it comes to belief formation for that much.
Right, and it's kind of like there are certain tools in people's tool bag that are good for one thing, but aren't necessarily apt for another. And so, for example, I don't think the God question can be answered scientifically, because I don't believe that they have the tools to make that assessment. And so that belongs to the realm of philosophy. And so it's kind of up to, again, the philosophical community to I mean, now that's not to say that you can't use science to falsify certain theistic claims, such as creationism. That's obviously, you can throw that one in the dumpster using science, but that says nothing about the existence of God, because you don't need creationism in order to be a theist.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, we got some people joining us real quick. First, James. Welcome, James. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
The gentleman is speaking about the naturalism. What's your name?
My name is Chris.
Chris. Okay. I'm part. Well, I hate saying I'm part this, but I do have Native American heritage in my bloodline. Would their spiritual beliefs be naturalistic belief?
Wait, hold on. No, because I would say that because I know what you're talking about, right? The Native Americans believe in the Great Spirit, things like that. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that right there could be described as a supernatural, non-natural causal power entity. Entity. And so, again, with naturalism, it would basically, a longer way of saying that natural reality exhausts causal reality would be to say that there are none but natural causal entities with none but natural causal powers. And so if you have, non-natural causal powers, such as magic, or if you have non-natural causal entities, those things, if naturalism is true, would be excluded. And so the same thing would go for Native American spiritualism as well.
Yeah, non-natural causal would also include miracles. James, are you familiar with a term called non-dualism?
I've heard of it. It's been a while since I've thought on that.
Yeah, look into non-dualism, which is a form of Native American spiritualism, similar, I guess, maybe to animism, maybe, but non-dualism, I think is very nebulous. But to me, I would put that under supernaturalism, because it does involve some kind of non-naturalistic causation. But anyways, real quick, I hope that answers your question. But
in reference to the questions, are we born atheists? How can we expect an answer to that question when the subject might not understand the context of the question itself, being the baby? They only understand that they're hungry and they need their diaper changed.
because they argue that by necessity that we're either born one or the other, because they make the equivalent sets. They make them illogically equivalents, and that's just arbitrary. You can do that with anything. That's not proving that we have to be atheists by global necessity. But Elliot, how are you? Elliot, you want to weigh in?
I'm hungry.
Yeah, what are you eating? What are you eating?
We can see.
Got a Crunchwrap Supreme over here.
I was gonna say, it looks like Taco Bell.
Dude!
Yeah.
Oh my god, I could kill for that. Crunchwrap Supreme.
I think what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I was talking to Godless Girl, I think on one of her YouTube posts or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Something about like T-Jump and Aron Ra, and how rocks are atheists, or something like that.
Yeah, if you agree with both T-Jump and Aron, you would have immoral rocks.
I just don't know. I don't know what exactly is their position anyway. What is their argument?
Aron holds that rocks are atheists because of a logical argument that I've already gone through. You weren't here at the beginning, so because of that logic, he argues that rocks are atheists and babies are atheists. We're born atheist. And then T-Jump argues that anything that violates your will, called an involuntary imposition of will, is immoral. So if a rock falls on your head, that rock has committed any moral act. I mean, it's the weirdest moral theory ever. Nobody in the right mind should ever take it seriously, but he does. So Carlos Girl's argument was just a conjunction of those. She argued that if somebody accepts Aron's argument that rocks are atheist and accepts T-Jump's argument that rocks can be immoral, that they fall on your head and violate your will involuntarily, then you can have literally a rock that's an immoral atheist, and she's not wrong on that. That follows by local necessity. That it just it's a logical conclusion. I mean, Godless, would you agree that that's how you argue it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so this guy, are you one of the ones that were saying, what's the problem with rocks being atheist in my comments?
No, I was asking like, because I saw that the post said that, well, like, I mean, it was like a loaded question, like it's saying like, you know, which statement is, which person is dumber or something like that.
That's not a loaded statement. That's
I want to credit. I kind of stole that from Steve's poll he put on Facebook about which is dumber. So I mean, I think it's a great question, but I just wanted to give him credit for it.
I mean, loaded. I make it very clear that I think both of them are stupid, but it is a difficult.
Yeah, it's definitely a loaded question because, like, if the only two options are okay, you're asking which one is dumber than the other. There's no other option besides.
But how's that loaded? I'm just giving.
Maybe one's.
But how's that loaded?
If I don't agree with the prior, like that, both of them are dumb, then yeah, it's a loaded question.
Well, no, it's not. There's logically there's only three things. Transitivity. Transitivity says that two things are either equal to each other, one is greater or one's lesser. Three options for the transitive property. So either Aron's statement is dumber than T-Jumps, T-Jumps is dumber than the other one, or they're both equal. And by the way, both equal. Hang on one second. Both
there's
equal.
There's no assumption in the question because they could both actually be really smart.
Right. Right. If they're both equal, then they could be neither one of them could be dumb. They could be both super brilliant and equal.
That's not the claim though. Like in the post, it was
which are dumber. Like, so that's not to say asking which is dumber. Both could still be like genius statements.
Yeah, like the question wasn't like which statement was dumber. It was like which person is dumber.
No,
like
not
this.
person. I think the statements. I think Aron's smart. I just think that him arguing rocks are atheists is stupid.
I mean, even if the question was which person is dumber, you could be talking about two geniuses and just be asking which one is dumber, or are they both the same?
Yeah. Which one's dumber, Einstein or Oppenheimer?
Hey, I think that this might help. Steve, what do you think would be the difference between asking, so when did you stop beating your wife, and then the other question that was asked on your poll? What would be the difference? I think that might help.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, if he wants to argue there's an implicature there, that I'm saying that there's a degree of dumbness to both of them, I'm okay with that. I don't mind that because there is a degree of dumbness with both of them. But it's not a loaded question. A loaded question is exactly what he said. A loaded question is something where you have to answer it. It implies something. For example, did you stop beating your wife? If I say yes, that implies that I started.
That either of them are dumb. Yeah, that's why.
Well, I think when you argue rocks are atheists, there's a degree of stupidity there.
Well, if someone argues that rocks are atheists, I mean, to hold the position of anything, that would not imply that you'd have to have a realm of thought to be able to process.
Well, what do you
facts?
mean? Like, I guess a better question to ask is like, how would you define the word atheist there?
Well,
what is an atheist?
He defines atheist as synonymous with non-theist. To him, they're the same term.
Oh, well, like, can a rock be an atheist?
No.
I agree with that.
Well, no, I'm not talking to you. Sorry. Somebody popped in the live chat. There's no possible way I'm letting on this channel.
What about this? What about this question? Can you
tell us who it was?
Oh, you didn't see?
No, we can't see who's in the back channel.
Oh, I've already kicked out two. The first one was Wesley Curry, if you remember him, the nut job that thinks that Jesus is coming back tomorrow or something. And the other one, I'm not going to say his name, but I'll give you his initials. His initials are BK.
Oh.
You know who I'm talking about, Godless?
I don't. I probably know, but
BK? Oh, come on.
How come you don't want to say the name?
Because I don't want to even get this. I don't want to.
Okay, that's fine.
Just there was an opera made about him.
Why don't you guys? Have you guys ever asked?
Okay.
Have you guys asked like?
Hang on one second. Think one second. Think the drunken peasants, the manatee.
Oh, I know who it is.
Okay. Yeah, now you know why. I don't even want to get. He gets nothing. Gets no airtime. Nothing. But go ahead, Ellie. I'm sorry.
I was just wondering, like, have you guys asked like T-Jump or Aron what they actually mean? Have they answered that?
Yeah, Steve and I have both debated T-Jump. Debated Aron.
Yeah, first of all, Aron and I used to be associates. He called me an former associate. We go not so really far back, but he's been on my channel many times. I mean, I hosted I got him to debate Ken Hovind. And then T-Jump and we go way back. He just talked to me the other day. He wants to come on Non-Sequitur to do some debates. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. So yeah, I know. I've discussed things. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to go to L.A. and debate T-Jump live in L.A. Yeah.
And not only that though, but they have made videos. Maybe not on this specific topic, but at the very least, they've mentioned it strongly in their videos. The two beliefs of both of these gentlemen. And so, I mean, it's publicly available information.
Yeah, this is nothing. Yeah, this is exactly what they believe. I'm not strawmanning them in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. I mean, do you believe that we're born atheists, Elliot? Do you believe we're born atheists? Do you believe we're born atheist?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, like, how could you have a belief?
Do you think an embryo is an atheist?
Well, I mean, whenever whatever you call it, a zygote or something, whenever that becomes, if you can define that at what point does that become a human? Like, once that point happens, then, like, the question is, does it have beliefs or not?
But that's the question we're asking. A zygote when that conforms to a fetus, when it goes to a baby, does a baby, once it's born, does it come out of the womb? Is it an atheist?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, but what's your argument for that? That's the discussion. I argue that's false, and I can argue logically that's false. But what's your argument? Yeah,
it's a hard question to answer. But I mean,
is it?
All we can do is look at, what's the opposite argument then? If it's not hard to answer, what's the opposite?
Do you think cats are atheists?
It's real simple. The answer is simple. Babies are born.
Are they thinking moral agents? Like, how do you define?
Babies are born non-theist and non-atheist, or neither. That's it. They're born without beliefs on the proposition. They're born innocent with respect to the proposition. They're unaware of the proposition. They don't hold any direct position on the proposition. They're not theist and they're not atheist. Period.
Correct.
That's simple. I mean, how much more parsimonious can you get with epistemic foundations? How much more parsimonious can you get? You don't have to jump through hoops. It's kind of, you know what it reminds me of, God? And I'm not saying LA here, but you know what it reminds me of? If we look at the solar system and we say, look, here's the sun, the earth goes around the sun, the planets go around the sun, right? And we can model this very easily using Kepler's laws, right? It doesn't take a lot of advanced physics just to do simple orbital, stuff for elliptical orbit. Now, so you can do that, or you can start adding in all these epicycles and all these other strange mathematics in order to say, oh, the sun revolves around the earth. Sure, you can do that, but why? It's more complicated, right? So
I just wanted to know, like, how do you define an athist?
Somebody who believes there's no God.
So is a cat a somebody? Or a rock?
No, I don't think cats hold they're not aware of the proposition. They don't think the proposition is true or false. They don't have a position.
Right.
Yeah, but then how do you? Because some people will make the distinction between new atheists will say being an atheist is just that, if you don't have the belief.
Right, and I think they're wrong.
And like the traditional, I guess, more philosophical sense is that you'd be they would be like an agnostic atheist, so it's like a different kind of definition. So which one are you?
Agnostic atheist is nonsense. I've already demonstrated that as far as I've seen, there is no logical schema that makes agnostic atheist work. There's no logical scheme. I've never seen anybody make one. If you can, by all means, I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm not going to go that far, but I'm going to say that to date, nobody ever has. So you'd be the first. So if you can make, not you specifically, but if somebody can make a logical, coherent, unambiguous schema for the term agnostic atheist using simple logic, I would be more than happy to look that over. To date, nobody's ever had. But a baby.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's possible to be an atheist and an agnostic, I guess.
Not on the same proposition.
Steve, would you say that those two things, atheists and agnostics, would not necessarily be more like either contradictories or contraries?
They're contraries and they're mutually exclusive. Well, they're not even contraries. Right. They're called, it's a subcontrary is what it actually is. Okay. They're subcontraries.
I guess the traditional sense of what an atheist is that a person who has the positive belief that gods don't exist. So is that what you mean by atheist then? And yes. That would be a contradiction with agnostic?
Well, the reason that you can't be agnostic and an atheist on the same proposition is because they're two different epistemic dispositions. There are three rational epistemic dispositions for any given proposition. Okay, and so there's only three in the belief space that's rational. There's believes the proposition, there's disbelieves the proposition, and then there's suspend judgment. Okay, so if you're aware of the proposition, everything should be falling into one of those three things. Either you believe it's true, you believe it's false, or you have no position either way. If you can think of something else, let me know. Can you?
I want to make a point though. Steve doesn't really go around like tracking down people who call themselves agnostic atheists and tell them they're wrong. What he does is he opposes the people who are telling people you can't define atheist this way. You can't. All atheists, you are not theists. You can't,
correct.
Call yourself. If you're an agnostic, you are an atheist. The ones that do that.
Right.
So then these, so the people, so like all these, I guess you call them the new atheists or whatever. They'll like Matt Dillahunty will say, being an atheist is just lacking the belief in a God. So how does it?
But because Matt Dillahunty, if he's doing it categorically, he's wrong, and he knows he's wrong on that. He won't. He actually will sometimes say, "Well, in philosophy, it's this, this, and this," and he accepts that. But how he defines it is lack of belief. Now he can only define that for himself. He cannot do that for anybody else, right? But he says it so categorically, like it's normative, and that I find to be dishonest, because Matt knows that's not the truth. Matt knows that it is more normative in philosophy that atheism is the belief that God does not exist. And by the way, that's his position. He believes there are no gods. He doesn't merely just lack a belief. Matt Dillahunty believes there's no God. Same with Aron Ra. He doesn't just lack a belief.
Can you be an atheist and have the positive belief that gods don't exist, and then could you also be an atheist and just not know the truth either way?
Well, no, not knowing is irrelevant.
Because that position that you saying that there are no gods is not a position of absolutism. It's inference to the best explanation.
Or knowledge. It's not a position of knowledge either.
Right. So if it's only the inference to the best explanation, there's a possibility that it could be falsified. And that could be by several different means. So for someone like me, when I say that there are no gods, I'm expressing that belief, but I could be wrong. I mean, it doesn't mean that it absolutely must be this way.
Yeah, and
so then, like,
let me dovetail now, because it's kind of important. This is where it gets into a fallacy that you see theists do all the time. They'll say, well, prove your God, right? When you're not arguing that. Chris is not arguing that he can prove there is no God. So if you say, hey, Chris, you believe there's no God, prove it, you're automatically strawmanning him.
Yep, not going to be able to do that, sorry.
Because that's not his claim. He's not going around saying, I can prove there's no God. He's just saying, that's my doxastic state. I am convinced there is no God. You can ask him to justify it if he wants to have a conversation with you, but not you, again, specifically. But he doesn't have any onus to have discursory burdens to anybody. If he wants to have what's called an autobiographical assessment or self-reflection of his doxastic, what's called belief box, and that's fine. I can say, look, I believe that young earth creationism is false. Right? I believe that.
Steve,
one sec. Let me finish here. I believe that young earth creationism is false. If I want to have a discussion with you and persuade you that's the case, then I have a discursory burden, or persuasive burden. But if I don't, I have no burden to you. You could say, hey, Steve, do you believe that young earth creationism is false? Yes, I believe it's false. Prove it. Well, one, I never said I can prove it. And two, I have no onus to even go further than that. You just ask me what what I'm convinced of. You only ask me what my beliefs are. I have no epistemic or discursory duty to have a conversation with anybody if they ask me what my belief is, or I just tell them my belief. I can say, look, the earth is round. Well, why? I don't care to get in that with you. I'm not going to waste my time with a flat earther. But that's what I'm convinced of. The earth is an oblate, irregular spheroid, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but still, like, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like, if
how does it not? Wait, how does that make any sense?
Well, if you were going to ask me, I'll say, if you ask me, do you believe God exists? And I'll say, I don't know.
That's an agnostic.
If you ask Matt Dillahunty, he'll say, I think God probably doesn't exist, or something like that. So what's the difference? Wait, neither of us have a belief that God exists. So
because those are weasel words. Those are weasel words. Use words like probability are weasel words in those types of situations. Either you believe there's a God or you don't. Correct?
Yeah. So if I don't have that belief,
well, hang on. Hang on. Work with me here, and then I'll get to James in a second. You either believe there's a God or you don't believe the God. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. You either believe there's no God or you don't believe there's no God. Is that not true too?
No.
How is that not? That's
because you can say I don't know.
No. Think about this. I'm not trying to screw you here, dude. Trust me, okay? Think about this because this is logic. If it is logical that you either believe there's a God or you do not believe there's a God, it has to follow the same law of negation. You either believe there isn't a God or you do not believe there isn't a God. That is the law of negation. That's a tautological statement, it's called. It is one or the other. Either you accept and are convinced there is no God, or you're not convinced there is no God. There is no other middle ground. There is no other positions for that. Be of the same reasoning. Either you're convinced there's a God or you're not convinced there's a God. The same thing has to follow for the negation. The same exact logic has to be true. So
then Matt Dillahunty would be right to say, in his belief then.
Matt Dillahunty believes there's no God.
Well, the way he defines atheism is...
It doesn't matter. He believes there's no God. Right?
That's his belief, but he just generally defines atheism.
But I'm asking you.
That's true for other new atheists.
But I'm asking you. I asked you, do you believe there's a God? You said no, right? Correct.
I don't have the belief that there is a God.
Just be simple, right? I'm asking you. Do you believe there's a God? It's a simple yes or no question, really. Do you believe there's a God? Either you do or you don't.
I can't hear you. What are you saying?
Do you believe there's a God? Either you do or you don't. It's a yes or no question. Yes, you do. No, you don't.
I don't have that belief. No.
Can you just so I can make sure that we're on the same page, can you answer directly, yes or no? Do you believe there's a God?
I don't have that belief.
Can you answer directly, yes or no? A direct answer for a direct question. This is what's called obfuscation. If I ask a direct question that will enable yourself to have a direct answer and you don't do it, let me finish. If you don't do it, that's called obfuscation. It's violating what's called Greece's maxims too. It's very simple. Do you believe that X equals X?
You're just asking me if I have a belief or not, and I'm just saying no.
Oh my
I don't
God.
have that belief.
Jesus fucking Christ, Elliot. Seriously, just put aside all your script. Put aside all your atheist stuff and all the things you've ever thought. Just talk like a person. Do you believe that X equals Do you believe that X equals X?
Yeah.
Say yes, please. Yes, so I can get you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe that, yeah.
Okay. Do you believe that there's a God?
No, I don't believe that.
Okay. Do you believe that there are no gods? Do you believe that the universe is godless?
I don't know.
That's okay.
We're not asking if you know or not. We're asking if you believe
I'm not asking if you know. It's either yes or no. You do or you don't.
Either I have the belief or I don't, and
yes,
I don't have it.
Okay, you don't have the belief there is no God. Okay.
That's what I was saying earlier.
Okay.
You asked me.
You believe there's no leprechauns, right?
So
you believe there's no leprechauns? Do you believe there's no leprechauns?
Why do you keep asking a question like that? Why don't you just ask me, do you have the belief?
Because these are legitimate questions.
Do you have the belief or not?
No, we don't care. I'm asking you what your status is with the proposition. That's what I'm doing. I hold the belief. I believe there are no leprechauns. Believe it. Okay, leprechauns do not exist. So if she asked me, Steve, do you believe that leprechauns don't exist? I'm gonna say yes. How hard is that?
How could you prove that, though?
I didn't say I can prove it. Did you not?
How is that relevant?
How did we not just say 10 minutes ago? There's a difference between saying
I believe. Is going to ask you the same
I don't
question.
give a shit about what a theist says. This is irrelevant. I just got done saying when Chris was done that if Chris says he believes there's no God, that does not mean the same as the claim he can prove there is no God. That's a straw man fallacy. You want a straw man fallacy, Elliot?
I don't have the positive belief that gods do not exist.
Okay. So in philosophy, you just be called an agnostic. Okay, that's the agnostic position. You don't believe either way. You don't believe. Okay. So, what about the people?
How's Matt Dillahunty wrong though?
I want to say something when you're done, Steve.
No, take it. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, so the psychology of the atheists and the people that fight about the rocks being atheist thing it's really just kind of, Chris kind of said it earlier, because they don't want the hassle of having the burden of proof. So they're trying to dodge the burden of proof, even though, you know what, they really do believe that no gods exist. So what I
A lot of
found
them
with
do,
like
yeah. A lot of them do.
yeah, most of them.
Mhm.
When like a lacktheist, one of these guys or a new atheist comes into a chat room, what I found to be very effective language, like to put them in a corner and get them to admit it, is to ask, look, sir, do you think that it's more likely than not that no gods exist? Or are you really totally on the fence? Like if you had a role, and I'm actually going to hold your feet to the fire here, Steve, because you call yourself an agnostic. Are you really totally on the fence? Like if you had a role, if you had to put your money somewhere,
I lean toward
let's
atheism.
roll the dice.
No, I lean toward, I lean, okay, you got to remember the fence has a big swatch to it. The fence, agnostic atheism is meaningless. The middle ground there, godless, the agnostic position isn't necessarily 50-50. I don't think it's 50-50 in my opinion, right? I lean more toward no God, right? So I'm on this side of the, I mean, here's the fence, but I'm on this side of the seat on the fence. Does it make sense? I'm in the same position where Malpass puts himself.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. What's this guy's name that's driving and eating?
Elliot.
Do you think it's more likely than not that no gods exist?
Yeah, I think it's far more likely that there aren't any gods.
Okay, but you said far more likely, but not sufficient to convince you there isn't. You're not convinced there is no God.
Yeah, how can I prove that?
We're not talking about proving. We're talking about what you're convinced. Look, you're convinced that God. You're convinced that theist at least shouldn't be the position you take. You're convinced of that. You're not a theist. You're convinced you are not theist, right?
Sir, everybody has all sorts of beliefs that they can't prove, but they still believe.
Yeah, but you are convinced that you're not something convinced you not to be a theist, right?
No, I just never was convinced by the propositions in the first place.
Elliot.
So like if a theist makes an argument that says, that they just say like, hey, God exists, and I say, well, I'm not sure I believe you. Does that make me an atheist?
No. But here's again, your position is that you have no beliefs either way. You're a fence sitter, correct?
I guess. Sure.
Okay. All right. So, do you think there's any arguments for atheism? Do you think there's any arguments that God shouldn't exist, that doesn't exist? You do.
Yeah, problem of evil for starters.
Okay. But that doesn't convince you sufficiently to say that that there are no gods, like it is Chris.
Well, I think it's pretty strong evidence against certain kinds of gods.
Okay, but that's not my question. Chris is convinced there are no gods. You're not convinced of that. You don't think that proposition is true, correct?
It depends on how you define God. What kind of God are you talking about?
Any kind of supernatural being. This is why I can see why Chris goes to naturalism, because it eliminates that whole obfuscation, right?
Yeah, it's just hard. Like you'd have to define the God first.
No, you don't. It's just supernatural being. Do you know what naturalism is?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you hold ontological naturalism?
It seems more likely than the other.
That's what I asked you. Do you hold to it? Yes or no?
I don't know.
You don't know what you hold to. You don't know your position.
It seems like naturalism seems like.
Okay, but that's not what I asked you. But you don't hold naturalism as true, right?
I don't know. Why do you keep asking the same question?
Because you're obfuscating. Because watch how easy this is. Watch how easy this is. Hey, Chris.
Maybe I just don't understand the terms, and why don't you just?
Because I know I've done this a million times. Your brain is thinking along the times of these script things, and you're not actually listening to the question. You're thinking ahead and trying to obfuscate, and whether you're doing it intentionally or not, everybody's noticing this. Chris,
you're just parroting Matt Dillahunty.
Right, you're just parroting Matt Dillahunty. So real quick, wait a sec. Chris, are you there?
No. No, I'm tired of getting interrupted. How's if I just?
I'm sorry, I was doing something, so I put my camera off.
If you ask me a straight question, I just say I don't know. Then why do you keep
You can answer I don't know.
I'm giving you a straight, honest answer. I don't know.
But how do you not know if you believe something or you don't? I don't. That's just a state of irrationality.
Oh, I don't know whether naturalism is true.
I didn't ask you if you know. That was not the question.
Well, ask your question again, then.
Well, let me ask it to Chris first. Chris, do you hold the proposition naturalism is true?
Yes, I do.
There you go. That's all it took. That's it. Okay, so either you believe X equals X or you do not believe X equals X. There's no other option. How do you not know how to answer? You either believe something or you don't believe it.
Well, I don't know if it's true or not.
You don't know if X equals X is true? Really?
I don't know whether naturalism is true or not. Can you say that?
Okay, but do you believe? I'm not asking if you know it's true. I'm asking if you do believe it's true. Are you convinced that naturalism is true?
I don't know.
Look, knowledge is just a subset of beliefs, right?
There's only two possible options. Either you're convinced or you're not convinced. Do you accept that?
And I guess I'm not convinced.
Thank you. So he's not convinced of naturalism. Chris
Maybe you
is.
should ask better questions. These
are direct as you can get. If anybody can come up with a more direct question, by all means, take away. I don't know how much more. Go ahead.
Elliot, is being ignorant bad?
I don't know. That depends. What are you being ignorant of?
Anything. The notion of ignorance, is it bad?
What, being in ignorance of what? What exactly?
That doesn't matter.
It does matter.
Ask me the question, James.
Yeah.
Ignorant of what? Ask me the question, James.
Is being ignorant bad?
No. Ignorance just means that you have something to learn about a topic that you're unaware of. Ignorance can actually be a good thing because it makes you aware of your shortfalls.
All right, follow-up question. Staying ignorant, is that bad?
It's not bad if you're unaware of something and you just don't have any ability to go learn something. Like I'm ignorant of a lot of subjects I don't even know about, right? I think it's bad when you're ignorant of a subject and you willfully stay ignorant when you are especially talking about those topics. If you are, like, for example, in the biological, groups, and you're talking about evolution, and you have a creationist that stays willfully ignorant of basic evolutionary concepts, that is bad. And it says it's the same thing for the atheist. The atheist says that argues these topics that say willfully ignorant of basic logic and epistemology. That's bad. How much more? And by the way, James, would you say I do not answer questions directly? How much more thorough can I get in my answers? Gigi asked me questions. Chris asked me questions. I have been nothing but direct in my answers. And do you see the difference between myself and somebody who hasn't really have a formulated good epistemic framework? By the way, do I know this person?
We don't even know what you mean by naturalism. You just mean what everybody else means, or do you have your own version of
Chris, can you take that one?
Yeah, I can. So when I say naturalism, what I mean is that natural reality exhausts causal reality. Or if you would like the long version, it would be that there are none but natural causal entities with none but natural causal powers. So that would exclude things like gods, ghosts, goblins, you name it, unicorns, the such. And so from that follows positive atheism.
I agree. Logically, it would. By the way, hang on one second. I got to say, JJ. Who's JJ?
You know who I am, McCrae.
Not that JJ. No.
Of course.
JJ. That JJ. Okay.
One of your biggest fans.
Of course.
Come
JJ.
on.
Hi, JJ.
Hi, JJ. Listen, by the way, can you just talk for a second? Just let people hear your voice.
Me?
Yeah, talk that. I just want to hear your voice. It's been a while.
What would you like me to say?
Oh God.
John 3:16.
Steve, all of your
JJ's
beliefs are unfalsifiable.
Steve, JJ's a pantheist now.
No, well, he was leaning that way before years ago, wasn't he?
Pantheism is interesting. I got to looking into it recently. Obviously, believe it's false, but I'm just saying.
You believe it's false?
Yes, because again, I'm a naturalist, so it would necessarily mean that in my view,
here's the thing.
There's different types of pantheism.
Pantheism is not that interesting because it's really just naturalism.
Yeah,
for the most part.
The way you view it, I would agree. But
and
again,
if you want to say there's two different kinds, there's probably a myriad of different kinds of pantheism.
Yeah, I agree. What are you eating? Who's eating their mic?
It's not me.
Elliot, are you eating your mic? Eat your sandwich, not your mic.
Sorry, I'm getting out of my car.
Well, I never thought I'd have to say that in a stream before.
The thing like that, godless girl talks about before. I've heard her say before is like that. She hates the terrible arguments that other atheists give, and I'm just kind of like, they were naturalism earlier. I'm just like, why should I be a naturalist?
Mm-hmm.
The arguments are just kind of terrible.
Well, you don't have to be a naturalist. I'm a methodological naturalist.
I never said I was a naturalist.
Yeah, Matt Dillahunty's a methodological naturalist.
The same thing.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you can be whatever you want.
I'm not an ontological naturalist. I don't think God is an ontological naturalist.
Well, it's like an analogy for atheism, right? So if we just replace naturalism with atheism.
No,
it's gonna run the same.
No.
No, because you can be an atheist and believe in other supernatural, entities and powers.
Now,
so you mean that because it only speaks to your position towards gods, not towards the supernatural in general. Atheism, that is.
Correct.
But you're saying that naturalism commits you to atheism.
Yes.
Yes, correct. Naturalism commits you to atheism, but atheism does not commit you to naturalism.
Correct.
Oh, I turn this down.
Now, it's funny that 100 years ago, there was some authors that used atheism synonymously with naturalism, but that was balked at, and with good reason, obviously, for reasons he gave. But yeah, you could be an atheist and believe, look, there are no gods, but I believe in tarot readings or something,
Right. I just don't like this idea that naturalism commits you to atheism.
But it does, because atheism is the belief there's no God, right? And if you believe there's no supernatural set, if you have the natural set and we'll call it the non-natural set, and we're going to call that non-natural set supernatural. If you believe that everything is in the natural set, there are no elements in the non-natural or supernatural set. Therefore, God, which would be considered normally supernatural, does not exist. It is an empty set.
Just requires you to use the label of God as entailing supernatural.
Well,
something.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk about a natural God, but who cares about that? I mean, an emperor can be called a natural God, but that doesn't capture what we mean by God, right? You go down, anywhere and say, hey, the
people
emperor
mean lots of different things.
Yeah, the emperor thinks he's a god, and people are like, so what? He's an idiot, right? By the way, did my live chat stop? Did it, or just they stop chatting because it hasn't moved, and I don't know if it froze.
I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, take an idol made of stone or resin or brass or whatever, but that's still a natural entity, comprised of natural components and atoms and whatnot. So, I mean, but when we're talking in philosophy, typically when people talk about God, they don't usually mean that kind of a God. They usually mean some sort of supernatural power or entity.
So Eliot, we found out, is an agnostic, philosophically speaking.
Is he really an agnostic though?
I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not going to go so far, right? I mean, if he says he doesn't hold the belief there are no gods, I'm going to take him at his face value for that. But so
am I an agnostic too then?
I don't. Well, you've always maintained neutrality, as far as I know. You've never said, "Hey, look, there are no such thing as gods that I'm aware of." But
I believe that some gods don't exist.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Yeah, well, there's a difference, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree there. You can definitely disprove some gods, but I don't think you could ever do that for all gods.
You don't need to. It's just a matter of
prove something to believe it's not the case, Elliot.
Right. You're just convinced. You're just convinced.
Don't you believe unicorns don't exist, Elliot?
Yeah, you can't prove
what's a unicorn.
Oh God, come on. That's okay. This is what I call sophistry.
An immaterial horse with a one horn.
Yeah, this is sophistry.
A horse with one horn.
Yeah, do you believe immaterial horses with one horn don't exist?
How about this? Do you believe square circles exist?
No, that's a contradiction.
Okay, so if you understand what a square circle might be as a contradiction, then all you have to do is say to yourself, okay, a fantastical being like a unicorn. You know what mythological beings are. You know what a unicorn's described as a horse.
It's not a contradiction, though.
It's not a contradiction.
I got a funny story about the square
It's not a logical contradiction, but it is a metaphysical, or at least I would say a nomological problem, because it violates what we know about biology, right?
Yeah, like you would have to do a different argument for why unicorns don't exist.
But it doesn't matter.
You can't just say it's a contradiction.
But you have a concept of what we mean by unicorn, correct?
Yeah, I have an idea.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the same as yours, though.
All right, but are you convinced whatever your idea does not exist?
Yeah, I think it doesn't exist.
Okay, there you go.
Why will you say unicorns don't exist, but you won't say you believe God?
Yeah, what is it about? What about the God claim you have reservation on?
Well, I like what kind of God are you talking about? Everybody's God is different.
I'll make it very, very simple.
Just like an immaterial being that created the universe.
Yeah, some being that created the universe. There you go. Simple as that.
That probably doesn't exist.
I didn't ask
so
probably.
You believe that doesn't exist.
You're either convinced or you're not convinced.
How do we know unicorns aren't just bulimic rhinoceroses?
Yeah.
How can you disprove? What is that? The teacup, the orbiting teacup or whatever? How can you disprove that?
People
you can't, but you still believe that the teacup is not there, right?
Russell's teacup is one of the most bastardized things I've ever seen from new atheists. They don't understand what he was arguing. I believe there's no teacup there. I'm convinced there's no teacup. You're not convinced there's no teacup?
Yeah, there's probably no teacup.
No. Stop using the word probably, because when you start using those words, it makes you look like you're obfuscating, okay, and being dishonest. We all agree.
Why am I being dishonest? I'm just giving you a straight answer.
Because that's not answering the question. You can say there probably isn't, but I am convinced. I'm not convinced, right? Or I can say there probably isn't, and I am convinced. It doesn't tell you what position you have. I could say, oh, there probably isn't, but I'm convinced that there isn't. That holds true.
No, I don't believe that.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
Or there probably isn't, and I'm not convinced. So probably doesn't tell you anything. Are you convinced or not convinced there's a teacup in orbit around Jupiter?
Well, probably does tell you something, because probably means more likely.
No, it doesn't. It just tells you a leaning. It just tells you both. I can say I'm convinced there's no teacup. That would mean there's probably not. And I'm not convinced there's no teacup and say there's probably not. It doesn't tell me which one of those two things I am. Are you convinced there is no teacup in orbit around Jupiter right now?
How could I know that?
I'm not asking you if you're no. I'm asking you, are you convinced that there isn't? Are you having the convinced state? Are you holding the belief that right now?
I'm not convinced. No.
You're not convinced. So you think, I just want to make sure that people understand how bad your epistemology right now is. You are actually agnostic on the proposition if there's a teacup orbiting around Jupiter, correct?
How can I know that? Yeah.
I'm not asking about knowledge.
Elliot, you can't know you're not in the matrix right now, right?
Yeah.
You believe you're not?
Yeah. So
how do you know like that? How can you know that one way or the other?
You don't believe you're talking to me right now, Elliot?
Elliot,
you don't believe you're talking to me right now.
I want to make sure, Elliot, are you being sophistic on purpose, or are you really trying to argue this?
Elliot, I don't think it's so bad, Elliot.
So Elliot,
well, what's wrong with saying it probably isn't there? What's wrong with
Elliot,
that?
I mean, I have to know this seriously. Are you on purpose, and be honest, are you purposely trying to be obfuscating and sophistic, or you actually believe that your arguments are good right now?
Well, if you and me are sitting on a bus and we're having a conversation, and before one of us gets off, you ask me a question, I say, yeah, probably. Is that a good enough answer?
You didn't answer the question, and this is where I'm asking. I have two moderators here. Did he answer the question?
No, not directly.
No, I don't think it's Steve. I don't think it's a very fair question. I think he's trying to be as honest as possible.
I don't know
think
that.
He's trying,
I don't know that.
And it seems a little antagonistic to ask him if he's purposely being sophistic.
I want to know.
Yeah, I don't actually know. So
I want to know if he is or isn't, Jay. So Elliot, I'm going to ask you again, and I'm going to try to take you at your word.
Are you convinced that he is or not convinced? Steve?
I'm not convinced he's being honest right now. I am not convinced that he is not willfully being obfuscating and sophistic. I'm not convinced.
So are you convinced that he is or not?
I'm not convinced either way. Right now, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. That's what I'm asking him.
So now you're agnostic then? Okay.
On your position. Yeah. So Elliot, are you willful? Do you actually hold these positions? Are these?
Wait. I mean, like, are you?
I want.
You're asking me this question. Like, he just asked you the same kind of
Elliot,
question.
just be honest. Because he just wants to know if you're purposely being.
I think there's probably not a teacup there.
No, that's not what I asked. Okay, so you didn't answer.
That just avoided the
I don't care.
question.
It doesn't matter what
this leads into what, because I'm a little confused.
I'm going to give you the same answer.
It's a very simple question, Elliot, and I'm just, again, very simple question. Is these actual arguments that you're arguing, or are you actually going out of your way to be sophistic and obfuscating? I want a direct yes or no answer,
no,
please.
I'm not being dishonest or something. I don't know whether there's a teacup there or not.
So these are actually your arguments.
Can I take a turn talking to Elliot?
Yeah, by all means. But I want people to understand that this is how bad lack-theist argumentation gets you. This is how inept you get when you start unable to even simply asking direct questions and getting a simple direct answer. Right. Because I mean, anybody can ask me a direct question. I answered. I answered James' question directly.
Well, I'm either a lack-theist or I'm an agnostic. Which one is it? Because you said I'm an agnostic, so I don't. How could I be a lack-theist?
Because of the same logical position.
I think. Well, that's because an agnostic is both a lack-theist and a lack-atheist, correct?
Yeah, they're conjunction.
Right, and I'm a lack-atheist.
Yeah. Because Jason, you understand this stuff, so you understand that.
Well, a little bit.
I mean, you've read my.
But I'm actually confused as to what you mean when you ask him if he's convinced or not. What is the state of being convinced?
That you hold the belief
to be true.
Yeah, the proposition. If I
how
say,
would you?
So here's the proposition:
And how does one know if something is true or not?
That's irrelevant. That gets into truth theory and knowledge theories. It's irrelevant. I'm not asking about knowledge. I'm asking about beliefs. Knowledge is a subset of belief, correct?
Right. Well.
Yes, right?
Fine.
Okay, so I'm asking about doxastic, in the scope of doxastic beliefs. I'm not asking about knowledge, which is a subset of that. That's irrelevant. That's more specific. We don't need that. So I'm asking just what his belief state is. So the proposition is, there is a teacup that's in orbit around Jupiter right now. There's only 3 states you can have that are rational. You believe it's true, you believe it's false, or you hold no position either way. I believe it's false. Let's do a poll. Godless Girl, do you believe that it's true, false, or suspend judgment?
I believe there is not a teacup.
So she believes it's false. Chris, do you believe it's true, false, or suspend judgment?
Yeah, I don't believe there's a teacup.
Now you can't go with that. That's ambiguous. True,
okay,
true,
there's
false.
no teacup there.
All right, so he believes the proposition is true. I believe the proposition is true. There is no. Wait, how did I word it? That there is.
That's right.
How did I word it? That there is or isn't?
Do you hold that there is? Actually, I don't remember, but I think I think it doesn't matter.
It does for the framing. Let's just say that the proposition there is a teacup. She holds it false.
I got a better question.
I hold it false. Chris holds it false. You probably hold it false. Elliot, do you hold that proposition false?
I don't believe either way, but I have a better question.
Why don't you believe either way? Can I talk to Elliot for a minute?
Go ahead. Yeah, explain. I want to know why he's agnostic on that proposition, because that's weird.
Let me ask my question.
Elliot, what about if you and I are sitting at a table and you see a teacup on the table, and I ask you, do you believe there's a teacup there? Will you say yes, or will you say probably?
I'll say it's there. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, well, see. So what's the distinction then between saying that, because you can't prove there's a teacup there, right? You can't prove you're not in the matrix.
Yeah. What reason?
You also can't prove that there's not a teacup orbiting around the Jupiter. So
you can't prove it either way.
Elliot,
so.
What evidence?
Yeah. So the fact that you can't prove it is not. Do you understand that the fact you can't prove it is not a reason to say you don't believe it?
Correct. That's an argument for being. That's
literally a fallacy.
The teacup on the table. Okay.
So
you can't demonstrate the teacup.
So Elliot, I got this.
That's the best you can do.
Elliot.
That is the difference.
Elliot, this is perfect, because even agnostics have to have a burden of proof. So I'm asking what your burden of proof is here. What reasons do you have to believe or not believe there is a teacup there? What evidence do you have either way?
What's the argument?
I just asked you a question. You are agnostic on the proposition. So something to you means that you are unable to come to a conclusion. I can come to a conclusion. I give my reasons why I believe there's no teacup there. Okay.
How could I have a belief?
I'd love to hear that, actually,
when I haven't heard, in a minute. If I haven't heard an argument one for whether it's existing or not, how could I have a belief on it one way or the other?
So I come up to you and I say, hey, Elliot, there is a teacup in orbit around Jupiter right now. You're just going to go, oh, I just suspend judgment on that, or you're not going to say you disbelieve me?
Yeah, I don't know what else you got in the bag, dude.
Really?
What other evidence you could have?
I think that's called gullible. Then you're so open-minded, your brain's falling out.
Well, no, I think you misunderstand me. If you say to me, hey, Elliot, I think there's a teacup in orbit around Jupiter, and I say, can you prove it?
No, but now you're straw manning fallacy. You cannot ask somebody to prove something that's not their claim. That you're straw man them.
Well, you just said that you said, hey, Elliot, there's a teacup in orbit around Jupiter.
I'm asking you, do you believe that to be true? Do you support my claim, or do you reject my claim?
I would need better evidence for that.
Not my
that's
that's
kind of a wild claim.
I love how you keep not able to answer simple questions. I ask a question and you say something completely irrelevant. Okay, is there any humans on Pluto? Do you believe there's any Pluto? I don't think so. No, I'll even go further. In Andromeda, I'm going to tell you that the claim is that there are people living on a planet in Andromeda right now. That's my claim. What is your position on that? Do you believe it, disbelieve it, or suspend judgment?
You mean like people, like human people?
Yes, humans, actual humans.
No, I don't think so.
That's not what I asked. Believe, disbelieve, or suspend judgment. If you don't believe, it's one of two. Either you believe that's false, or you believe you're agnostic on it. So when you say, let me finish. When you say you don't believe it, that's ambiguous, because it can mean one of two positions. It can mean you do not believe it because you believe it's false, or you do not believe it because you have an agnostic position on it. You hold no position either way. It's ambiguous. So I don't care for you when you say I don't believe it because I don't know your position. There's three possibilities you have. You believe that's true, you believe it false, or you suspend judgment. So my claim is, arguendo, there are people, humans, actual humans, living on a planet in the galaxy Andromeda right now. Do you believe, disbelieve, or suspend judgment?
Why do you need to know whether I believe?
I'm not playing this game. Pick those three.
Let me finish.
No, I'm not going to, because I'm having the moderators come in. Moderators, I've asked him a direct question. He has to have one of those three.
Let me finish my answer. I'll just leave. I don't really care.
By all means, you're not answering anything. I'll let you answer.
How can I answer a question?
Direct answer.
I'll let you answer. Then I will let the moderators review if you answer one of those three things. Okay, fair. Go ahead.
I don't care. It's your show. You asked me, like, I'm asking, like, why is it even relevant for you to? Why would you need to know whether I have the belief or I think that I don't know either way? Why would that even be important to you?
Moderators, did he answer the question?
No, that was actually an avoidance of the question. That's where I would place that.
Okay. Do we want to try again, Elliot?
Why I don't believe there are.
That doesn't answer the question. Do you want to try again?
Well, like it doesn't matter. You have a like. Well, why do I need to answer? There's no claim being made.
I am making the claim. I'm claiming there's humans living on a planet in Andromeda right now. That's the claim.
Okay, I don't believe that. Then.
I didn't ask you if you believe it or not. I asked you.
Well, it's a claim. I don't believe it.
But I didn't ask you if you believed it or not. I asked you which epistemic disposition do you have? Believe, disbelieve, or suspend judgment?
That's doesn't seem like the claim. You're making the claim that there are people on that planet. I'm saying I don't believe that.
I don't care what you believe or disbelieve. I'm not believe. Disbelieve means you believe it's false. If you say you don't believe, it could be because you disbelieve or you suspend judgment. You're one of those two. I
didn't say disbelieve. I said I don't believe.
I understand that. Because you said you don't believe, you're one of those two positions, and you're obfuscating. So I'm going to ask again. I'm going to turn over the mods. There are only three. Do you accept there's only three rational dispositions? Believe, disbelieve, or suspend judgment. Do you believe that's true?
Well, if I don't have a belief, then wouldn't that make me an agnostic?
I didn't ask that. I said there are only three rational dispositions: believe, disbelieve, or suspend judgment. Do you accept that?
What is suspend judgment? Is that agnostic?
Yes, agnostic.
Then why am I not an agnostic on that?
I'm asking you. Do you accept?
I don't see what the problem is.
I'm going to ask.
I mean, you could directly answer and say, yes, I suspend judgment, and I am therefore agnostic concerning that proposition.
But I want to know if you accept.
That would be a perfectly acceptable answer. I mean, if that's where you stand, then just say that.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that he accepts logically there are only three rational epistemic dispositions, and you can go research this and go look it up at Stanford. It's all there. Belief, disbelieve, or suspend judgment. Those are the only three rational epistemic statuses that you can have directly on the proposition, right?
Okay.
Do you accept that? Do you accept that?
Like, if you tell me that you won $1 million yesterday, and I say I suspend judgment on,
I'm going to mute you because I'm done. If you cannot answer simple questions, we're going to move on to somebody else because I've asked you this multiple times. So I'm just not going to play this game because this is insanity. If I keep asking you a question and you cannot answer, then you're not worth my time. And I'm just done because at this point, it just makes no sense to continue. I mean,
Elliot just needs to lay off those Matt Dillahunty videos.
But at least people can see. And by the way, I don't do this just for entertainment. You know, I do this because I want people to see how bad their argumentation is. And his argumentation is so freaking bad that he's just playing at this point. And I don't like that. I take these arguments, to be strong arguments. And if you're just going to not be able to answer a question, you're useless to me. I want somebody to come in that can answer direct questions. So thank you, Elliot. I appreciate it. But until you learn to actually be honest and answer questions directly, then I don't see a point to continuing. And I hope everybody understands that. Does anybody disagree with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't.
Because what happens is, because I'm not just here to for entertainment purposes.
Yeah, I call that the Jello conundrum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, but I mean, where can you go with somebody like that? It's just obfuscating.
Yeah. Okay. For those that don't know me, I actually met Steve after debating Mark Peacock 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that was funny.
Oh my God. Yeah. But I'm a prior young Earth creationist just from 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah. He left young Earth creationism. Yeah.
And what I see in Elliot right now was me up until 3 weeks ago, but I wasn't that dodgy in my young Earth creationist beliefs. I would give you, an absolute answer but I knew that there was knowledge out there that I wasn't recognizing. That's why I was asking,
Yes.
is being ignorant bad? Being ignorant is not bad, but staying ignorant is, because I stayed ignorant for 51 years of my life
Lawrence, could
until
you?
someone slapped me in the face and say, "Hey, there's more truths out there. And if you just sit in the shadows, you're going to end up like Elliot.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
Yeah.
not going to be able to come on a live stream and answer questions, because if you answer a question truthfully that Steve's asking, yes, no, or I don't, affirm, choose to stay agnostic. If you can't do that, your beliefs are, non-valid, because you don't even believe what you believe.
Yeah. And by the way, I
100%.
didn't remove him. I just muted him. He left on his own accord. I didn't boot him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to, insult Elliot. I don't mean to insult anybody, because I was an ignorant fool.
So let me ask
And,
you
you
this,
know,
James. Let me ask you this, because we're running out of time. This is another thing. I wanted to get another person in here who might be more honest in his dialogue. So Milwaukee Atheist says this. He says, I don't think he was being dishonest. I think he wasn't getting it. That's not dishonesty. The problem is, I call it intellectual dishonesty. Even if it wasn't an out of the way to try to be dishonest, it doesn't take a genius to figure out if you're being asked a direct question, you need to respond as much as you can with a direct answer. Okay? Doesn't take a rocket scientist to do that. Every single question I asked him, he answered differently. Every single one. I don't think he answered a single question directly. Maybe after one or two. But for the most part, every question that I asked him, he answered some other question. That's not intellectual dishonesty.
Well,
and so real quick, I want people to recognize that. So even if he didn't intend it, he needs to go back and rethink how he should approach being honest in a dialogue. Because everybody in here has answered questions. And he couldn't answer a single question. So, Lawrence, I do want you to come in. But James, so people know, do you think that my videos and people that are in the communities on these topics, they helped get you to reevaluate your position?
Oh yeah, very much so.
So if there is a helpful thing to be had by people like Elliot showing people how bad, Matt Dillahunty's, epistemology is, because he's just parroting that. It doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't change the mind of anybody, And so if you really want to have a honest dialogue with people where you can change their position, which I have on many different things, you have to be able to answer questions as honestly and directly as you can, even if they harm your argument. Because a lot of times, like who asked me something earlier, I wanted to make sure I answered very clearly, because I knew it could be taken the wrong way and harm the argument if I didn't phrase it in a certain way that made sense to people, because I've done this for a while. There's nothing wrong with that, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you see a lot of people that are afraid to even criticize their own arguments. I do it all the time. I'm like, man, did I screw up? Is there a fault in my argument? You always do these belief reassessments. And I don't think Elliot even understood why he was being so intellectually dishonest about the topic, because he hasn't been exposed to the study of epistemology or basic logic, because he's so just obfuscating, like which it does for Matt Dillahunty. Who's this person? Okay, one second.
And I think he was making a common, mistake in not making a distinction between I believe not and I do not believe.
Correct. Well, I think I
Right. I
understand.
mean,
that.
I think that's what I don't think so. I think he was
One sec.
using them interchangeably.
Yeah. All right. So who's this? Cube. Who we got here?
Before we go any
Peace to you, man.
further,
It's Cube.
Who?
Yeah. My name is Cube. How you doing, man?
Okay. Do I know? I'm just wondering. Do I know you?
Nah. Actually, you don't. I just want to let you know that I've actually been following you for the better part of about a year and a half, going on about 2 years, and I was one of those people who have been following, the atheist community of Austin, and once I begin to follow some of the things that you begin to put down, I was one of those guys that looked at, like, atheism is just, hey, listen, we don't have to do anything. It's just, I don't believe in, a God, and this is all I have to believe in. But when you begin to put some of this, when you begin to put some of these things down, I used to be like, hold on. Now it's starting to make sense to me. Like, we have to really defend some of these things, because atheists, from my perspective, the way how I used to look at it as, I don't have to defend anything. It's just force
make an
me to.
observation?
It's lazy thinking that they advocate for. It's lazy thinking. Because Chris advocates atheism. He advocates there is no gods. He'll be happy to explain to you why there are no gods.
Right. And let me just say this real quick, and you guys can feel free to go. And one thing I want to bring to you guys is, like, you put up a poll on your channel, and you said, you know, should you continue to smash? And I was one of those guys that said yes, continue to smash it, because
I saw that.
Yeah, I was one of those guys. I was one of those guys. I was one of those guys that you like my comment. I was like, yes, continue to smash it, because
I read
like,
comments.
it's really, like you like my comment when I was like, yeah, continue to smash it, because a lot of people really don't understand that us atheists, even though you're not an atheist, and I understand that, we have to hold either a positive or a negative view. And me personally, after listening so much to what you have said, and trust me, I'm one of these guys. I've never engaged into what you do, but I promise you, I've listened to so much of what you do. I have now come to the point to where I've listened to what you're saying, and now I engage into it. I say yes. Okay, yes.
Hallelujah! Another Lactheist has been saved. Praise the gods of agnosticism, or whatever.
Listen. I say yes. I engage and I say yes. Prove to me that your God exists, and no, I can no longer say, oh, I just no longer believe that your God exists.
Well, just remember this. Remember this, though. If we're going further, don't ask him to prove that God exists, because that's a fallacy. What you should ask him to do is, what are your reasons why you're convinced? And I'll tell you the reason why I'm convinced that there is no God, and compare. And then you just say, okay, let's weigh your evidence against my evidence, right? Because these are arguments.
Right.
And then if they might give you something to give pause. They might say, hey, well, how about this, and this? You're like, let me think about that. And you might do the same for them. They're like, well, shoot, I always thought that God was the only possible explanation, but you're giving me another possible explanation. Now I have to reconsider and reevaluate my beliefs. I mean, I've had people leave younger creationism. You know how difficult that is? Why? But they did reevaluate their beliefs, right? Go ahead.
But see, you know what, man, and see, this is, and I'm gonna be honest with you, because like I want to ask you so many questions, and I know it's probably very difficult to do it, because I know you have limited time, especially.
Yeah, I go for 2 hours, and we're at the 2 hour mark, and that's why I was being a little bit harder on Elliot, because he wasn't going anywhere. He was just.
I actually have to go.
Yeah,
sorry, my boyfriend wants to watch some stuff. But I want to say one last thing before I leave. It's good that Steve he's there's nobody that comes close to Steve when it comes to somebody taking up the fight against these Aron Ra, Matt Dillahunty definition of atheism types. So it's good that he did that, but it's also sad because I've known Steve for a really long time. I remember like 10 years ago, probably, he had like in the old Hangouts, back when he was like friends with Fiona. He was like arguing with young Earth creationists, and they were so passionate talking about evolution. I was like, wow, I don't like anything as much as you guys like science, Steve. Mm-hmm. And he was so happy and passionate, and now he's like wasted his online career. Not wasted, but thrown away so much of his time with the evolution stuff because of these dumb atheists.
But you know what's so funny though? In the long run though, because my arguments are such the way they are, I think it's improved everybody around, as a whole. Right? Because you're right. We go back, a decade or so, and you remember when originally a lot of the atheists were so indoctrinated by the ACA and the atheist experience that they just knee-jerk reactions to hell and back on anything I had to say. I was an idiot, according to them. And then all the ones that were in the atheist community that went to college came back and go, oh, yeah, Steve's right. No kidding. But I think it's overall elevated the discussion. So it's helped Young Earth Creationists. I mean, maybe not directly, because I still do the Young Earth Creationist stuff. But look at James. A month ago, he was a Young Earth Creationist. Look at Wayne Fillmore. He was a Young Earth Creationist. I debated him, and a month later, he changed his position. That pretty, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to go. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Godless. Yep, good night.
Nice meeting you.
Bye, Gigi.
And let me say this, Steve, before you go. I'm one of those guys who I just saw, like, within the past 5 years, I just saw you, and I really didn't comment a lot. I really didn't say anything a lot, but I really just sat back. I just sat back, and I just saw everybody either move away from what you were talking about, didn't really want to engage with you, And then as you begin to speak more and more about it, I was like, hold on, well, Steve is actually right about this. But then I saw more and more that people didn't want to engage with you because you were actually right. And I was like, now me personally, I love Aron Ra and everything
I
he
do
stands
too.
for.
Look,
No, listen, listen. I know that. No, I
Yeah,
know
go
that. Listen, I know that. But one thing that I do know is that he won't engage with you because what he does when it comes to philosophy and things of that nature, he's 100% correct. But he will not engage with you, and I understand why he won't.
Yeah, and neither will Matt Dillahunty. They're the same reasonings. I think privately they know that I'm correct because they've been told I'm correct, but publicly they can't announce it. They cannot,
and it's unfortunate.
concede that. Yeah. It would hurt their status in the atheist community for them to dare admit that I was right, even though Matt has come out and said that he holds the same position on agnostic atheism as I do now, that he changed a year ago and he uses my same arguments that people had told him, so he knows my arguments, but he will never admit that it was my arguments that convinced him, even though he attaches my name to that every single time it comes up.
Listen, let me say this real quick. You know what's so funny is that I was listening to you 2 years ago. 2 years ago when you were saying these things about Matt Dillahunty, and then after he left the ACA, he also began to agree with the things that you were saying. I was like, holy shit, now he's agreeing with Matt. I was like,
dude,
wow,
think about this.
You got to be kidding me. I was like, what?
Do you know how many
is he
people...
now agreeing with him? I was like, this is crazy.
Check it real quick. Do you know how many people had told me that when I first started having arguments against agnostic atheism, like trying to explain to them, me and Ozzy, matter of fact, went on people's channels and we're trying to explain to people why this is epistemologically unsound, why it is bad. And we did so, I think, very effectively, but I had so much people giving pushback on it, one of which was Matt Dillahunty. And finally, I know some experts that had some private conversations with him, I'm sure, and that he changed his position on it. And he's like, okay, I no longer take the label of agnostic atheist. I do think it is nonsensical because we acknowledge a subset of the belief. He got all that from my arguments. But you know how many people tell me when I tell them that I'm lying? And then I show them the videos, and I had one person just recently go, damn, you're right. Yeah, I know. It's his own words. You're right, Steve. And I'm like, but who do you think... what arguments do you think convinced him of that? Do you see anybody else arguing against agnostic atheism besides me? Very few, and anybody who is got it from my arguments.
Yeah, he didn't get it. He didn't get it from anybody else but you. And I literally saw it. I'm telling you, from 2 to 3 years ago, I literally saw Matt Dillahunty change his position. And I'm telling you, I'm one of those people too that you did your videos and things like that I never commented, I never said anything. I was like one of those stealth guys to just literally just watch your videos. And I literally seen him from the time that he was talking, and then from the time he left the ACA, I saw him now to adopt what you were talking about. And I'm like, wow, look at this, how he would just totally change now that he left the ACA. So I'm like, look at this.
Right?
Now he's totally changed. Now he's totally changed everything.
Absolutely right.
And I'm like, look at this. Like, isn't this so crazy?
Is this your first hangout, by the way? This isn't your first hangout, though, right?
No. Listen. Let me tell you something about myself.
Sure.
I actually have had over like 30 debates. I debate very often, but in the black sector with black atheists. And,
I'm on the Facebook group for them. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I debate often. It's just that when it comes to this sector of like white atheists, I'm really not over here. I just listen a lot.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I got you.
Yeah, I really don't
by the way, we
engage,
need more black atheists and agnostics.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Get some more gay ones too. I'm all on board. I'm multicultural when it comes to that. Bring them on board. I don't care.
And for that matter, Satanists as well. That'd be great. I'd like to see more of that too.
I have 2 quick questions. One. So, Q, you've always been a non-believer, or were you a theist at one time?
Oh yeah, actually, I was a non-believer. Well, I was a believer from the time I was born until the time I was 10 years old when my mother died, and after that, I was a believer for about 10 years after that. And then after that, I became a non-believer when I was approximately maybe 22 years old.
Can I ask what denomination?
I was a Christian. Yeah, absolutely.
Just
I was a
standard, or like a more of evangelical or charismatic or
no,
Pentecostal?
No, Protestant
okay.
Christian. Yeah,
right.
yeah. I was a
You were the white people Christian, they call it. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. You get that, right?
and you know what's so funny, and I'm gonna tell you guys, and I can turn on my camera so you guys see my face if you want. But what happened is about like when I really became an atheist is about 5 years ago, and this is when I began to create a channel and all of these things. And I became an atheist, and I began to see people like Aron Ra. I began to see all these guys, and I said, you know what? Damn, I don't see any black atheists. And I said, damn, but see, this is before I knew of the black atheists that are out there now.
Yeah.
Now, this is before all of these. So I said, damn, I don't know any black atheists. So this is when I was like, hold on, let me start something of my own. But then I began to see people like Mendisa Thomas. Like you guys know her, like Mendisa Thomas.
There's only two. Right. There's only two black atheists that I know that I will never mention their names ever again. Well, one I'll mention his name, but the other one I won't. But you know, it's just because somebody is an atheist doesn't make them an honest person, and they're.
Oh no, hell no! Yeah. I don't. No. I don't think that an atheist means honesty or kind or giving or no. That's not what that means. That's.
You know what you should do, Cube? I don't know if you know Willie Mays fan. He is a black young earth creationist. I would love to have you guys have had it one time. That'd be amazing.
Oh my God. Yeah. Why?
But you know what? He likes to learn things. Willie Mays fan at least will listen. He's not like one of those radical young creationists. He's not like, just anybody who parrots what they've heard. He actually will talk about the discussions, and he's been a follower of mine for quite some time, and I respect him because I have a lot of younger Christians follow me. It's the fruit on the ground ones, but there are theists that are fruit on the ground. There's atheists that are fruit on the ground. Everybody has fruit on the ground stuff. Flat earthers are fruit on the ground. So you might actually get along with them. Have some good discussions. Convert him. Get him back to, at least old earth creationism. He doesn't have to go all the way to atheism or non-belief.
Listen. I'll tell you, man. Like I'm gonna tell you, like, and Steve, like, you may not believe this. You may not believe this, and if you don't, it's cool. But you, my friend, you have given me so much when it comes to intellect. But when it comes to philosophy, you really don't know.
You're gonna make me cry, dude.
Whoa. See, hold on. See, I knew you were gonna try to interrupt.
Sorry.
This is why I gotta stop you. You really don't know that you've given me so much, bro. You've given me so much homework that I've done, and I was like, hold on, god damn. You've given me so much homework to where I've done so much homework and actually been able to debunk so many people, so many things on so many times. I'm going to tell you, Steve, there's a lot of people out here that does not like what you do, but I promise you on everything I love, when I begin to listen to a lot of things that you say when it comes to because you like to say, I don't really know a lot about this, and I don't know a lot about this, but just a small modicum that you think that you have, you've given me so much that I've been able to look on and look up, that I've been able to destroy people in my community to just bring to bring them, because I'm telling you, just to bring them into something simple.
Mm-hmm.
Because let me say this last thing, and I promise I'm gonna let you pause it the next thing that you want to. In the black community is so devoid of things that make sense. The black community is so devoid of things that make sense to where it's so difficult to talk to black people, to where it's hard for us to disassociate ourselves with bullshit.
Hey, Cube.
Hello.
Hey, my name's James. Question for you: would you consider Steve the Kevin Samuels of Theist, Not Theist?
Who is
that?
Brother. I don't know who that is.
Hey, brother. Hey, brother. Can I finish what I was saying?
I'm sorry.
let him. Yeah, he's talking about me. Go ahead.
Yeah, but when it comes to Steve, this brother Steve has really done a lot. And I'm gonna be honest, when it comes to this brother Steve, I'm not gonna lie to you. This brother Steve has given me a lot. But go ahead and ask your question. Go ahead.
Well, first, let me respond if I can. I'm humbled and a little blown away. But the best response I can actually give you is Milwaukee atheists, suck it. That's so.
Shit was funny though.
No, and I appreciate that. I mean, when I talk about should transverse all cultures and all backgrounds, it's fundamental basis of thinking. And you're probably right. I mean, the black culture, which again, I am just not involved with. I mean, my roommate's black, so that's about the closest I get. But we talk about all kinds of stuff, and I think you're absolutely right. I think there's not a lot of coherency in the atheist black communities. I don't think they have a lot to go on, and I think that because they've listened to people like Matt Dillahunty on the Atheist Experience, and they've had that bad foundation of epistemology and what atheism actually involves, because atheism is a very rich subject. Atheology is an actual course you can get for interdisciplinary studies at Princeton. There are papers and papers written about atheism, and you ask a lack belief atheist, what have you ever read on atheism? They've never mentioned anything about the papers, hardly. They'll talk about Dawkins or Denny, but maybe they read Flew, maybe, or they've maybe read Stanford, which is Draper, but nothing else they know about. And so you're right. I don't think the black community really has involved themselves in any of that stuff, and that's a shame. It really is.
One of the things that I actually have noticed too is when I bring up Dr. Graham Opie, sorry, and I will give him that title, even though I'm a theist, I'm a Christian, and I will give him that title wholeheartedly because I respect the man that much. Now, Dr. Graham Opie, I bring him up, and I noticed that I think
it's Opie, not to be a pendant, but I think it's Opie.
Oh.
Yeah, it's great. Like
it's
Graham
Opie.
as in graham cracker, and then Opie.
Yeah.
Okay, so Graham Opie is when I actually mention him, I had someone that literally has told me that he's misrepresenting the position. I'm like, really? What about Dr. Paul Draper? I actually had an email. I emailed him for some stuff on atheism as well, and he was very, very cordial about it. Dr. Graham Opie has been very cordial as well. Just because, and I've seen rotten tomatoes on all sides, and then there are very cordial people on both sides. The people I have a bone to pick. The people that I have a bone to pick with on my end are really the fundamentalists, and especially you got you have. We pretty much have cooked Hova until he's a crisp. We have what is his name? Ken Ham. There's others like that in that camp that have really poisoned the well. I have a lot of issues with that. So again, there's always the rotten few that make it very difficult for the ones that actually want to have the communication with each other to have that and have it without any how do you say it, without any animosity.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Look, I just had Dr. Jonathan McLatchie, who is a PhD in biology. He and I go pretty good back, and I had lunch with him last year, and it was great. We had a great discussion, and he messaged me and he said, "Hey, I have a student," because he's a professor now, assistant professor, but he had a student. He's like, "Hey, we're doing this project," and he's like, "My student wants to know about agnostic and things of that nature." He's like, "Will you allow him to interview you?" I'm like, "Yeah," and it went really, really well. And that's because we have a mutual respect for each other. He's a theist. Older, kind of person. He's an intelligent design advocate. But I have a lot of respect for the man, right? Cy Gart is a biochemist. He's a theist. I have a lot of respect for him. Look at Jas. If you guys want hard arguments for theism to really just, to pick your brain or tax your brain, go look at Alexander Pruss and John Rasmussen. Rasmussen is Josh Rasmussen.
Dude's a fucking beast, bro.
Beast, and he's such a nice guy. He is like, I'm like, dude, you were too smart to be this nice. He's just such a nice dude.
He's had a studied psychology or something, because I'm telling you, he has a method to his method to his madness. That's what I'm saying. Like, when you listen to him talk, he knows exactly what he's doing, and I think he's trying to he's setting the tone. Yeah, I'm telling you that he's in more control than you think when you're talking to him. That's all I'm getting. And that's cool.
Yeah, I've had how many videos have there been from fundamentalists that will say, oh, all these atheists, agnostics, whatever you want to say, they're this, they're that, they're nasty, blah blah blah. I'm like, I've never had an issue on this show ever, never. I mean, I think I've been on here a few times, and I've never been attacked. I've never been cornered. I've never been turned inside out. War is me.
I actually had somebody a couple months ago say, hey, don't go on Steve's show. He bashes Christians. And I said, can you please give me a single instance of this? Of course, that will never happen, right? I mean, it's just, but that's the type of dishonesty that I see, because. Yeah.
Sorry, that kind of gets under in a way it's stupid, because I mean, behind the last show I was on, we were making some crude jokes, but that was just men being men, and we were talking about some of the rough things that we actually handle in our day-to-day affairs on the job. And even behind the scenes, we were pretty cordial with each other. It just never.
I'm the same way off air as I am on air. Anybody who's ever talked to me knows that. Yeah, I'm not one of those people that somehow change who I am when I go live. That's just stupid. That for people that do that, they're just putting on a front, and I don't like that. That's one of the reasons why I kicked out Elliot. I'm sorry, I muted him. He left on his own accord. I didn't kick him out, so maybe rephrase that. He left on his own accord, but. Because I don't like those types of things, right? I mean, I like to be who I am on air and off air, and you can tell that who he is probably how he is in real life too. It's just useless to have a conversation with, and I don't like that. I don't like having conversations with people that are not giving me a challenge or not informing me or edifying. We be a theist or not. You're a theist. You're intelligent. You're articulate, and you know the arguments, and so we can have a great conversation. And then they say, then they say I bash on Christians. Where? I'll bash on beliefs, like, if you believe like the earth is 6,000 years old, yeah, I'm gonna trounce you for that. But that doesn't mean I don't like the person, Go ahead. So.
Well, one of the, I could really go on. I could really take apart the 6,000 year thing, but I mean that's not really where we're gonna go with that
at this point, right?
Yeah, it's really child's play. I mean, the research actually shows that I'll go ahead and just go really on a shallow end on that one. If you actually look at a lot of, like, for example, the Enochian genealogy in Genesis, it's actually a king's list. So when you understand how king's lists worked back then, those numbers are not literal numbers. They didn't believe that people lived hundreds of years old. They actually had very symbolic meanings to them.
Yeah.
So in fact, that's the reason why, like, 365 days. They knew there were 365 days in a year. They weren't stupid.
Oh yeah. Oh, they knew a lot of things back then. By the way, two things. One, Cube, when you have a green background, they could put anything they want behind there. Be warned of that. And two, look at this guy. Guy's gorgeous. He's gonna have all the women, and I can't have that. I can't have that. So it's just I don't like competition.
Lady killer out here.
Damn. So.
Yeah, and so it's that right there. I'm not.
Can you hear?
We could go.
Can you hear us, Cube? You're muted, but you're muted on your end, not mine.
Yeah, it's so it was that kind of thing right there. We could go more in depth with that, but I'm not. The research in the Middle East is just very, very, very in depth. I mean, that would be a show on its own.
Yeah, but like I said, I love when people have those discussions. Like Milwaukee Atheist, he loves discussions like that. I mean, his whole studies is in Egyptology and Assyrian and was it there was Hotep, there was what was the one with the A? We talked about the other day. Not Anubis, but the other guy. What was his name? But anyways, we've gone so far off topic. So let's gotta start kind of wrapping it up because I just realized it's going on 2.5 hours now.
Oh wow. Well, let's, like, for example, I sent you that document with the free copy of John of Damascus's Font of Knowledge. I mean, in there it actually, that just the first book. So when people think like Christians can't critically think, when you actually read that, the first book in there is an instructional manual on critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's on.
I think it's a mistake to think that theists are not critical thinkers. I think that's an absolute mistake. They just looked at the evidence and they evaluated it differently. That's it.
It's demonstrably false.
Well, no, I don't think Christianity I don't think like belief in God is demonstrably false. I think that obviously young creationism.
No, that's not what I was saying. I was saying the proposition that theists cannot think critically is demonstrably false.
Akhenaten. Whatever. The ancient Near East, isn't that? Near
It's
East,
pretty broad.
That's pretty broad. Ancient Near East, you know.
So I should say when you're going to go and deal with issues of biblical studies, you're going to primarily it's going to be ancient Mesopotamian. There's going to be Egyptology in there. There might be some Persian issues in there, but it's going to be primarily Mesopotamian.
Again, that's Lawrence's jam, man. I stay in my lane.
Well, same here,
not so much.
But I had to, it's one of those things where I really got, very, very tired of being I got more and more, the more I got in depth with it, I'm very thankful and humbled to have had a very good and patient professor of Judaic studies that got me through being a fundamentalist. And so when you see, like, for example, G-Man, the reason why I was talking to him like this and I was just being as cordial as I can is because I get it. I was in his position before.
So was Chris. I've seen stuff from Chris that he probably doesn't really, he doesn't talk about much, but I've seen some stuff.
But it's like, just real quick though, I just wanted to say the reason I'm saying it's demonstrably false that theists aren't critical thinkers is just for the simple fact that we can come up with theists who are critical thinkers. Mm-hmm. There are counter examples such as, let's say, Alvin Plantinga. We have Timothy McGrew. Rasmussen. The list goes on. I mean, these guys, when you read their books, they're obviously critical thinkers. They use the same.
I didn't understand his book.
Tools.
I tried.
I know.
It's so high level.
I haven't read his Reasoning to God book yet.
Oh my God.
I'm intimidated by it. But
check out Necessary Existence. Matter of fact, Josh was like, "Hey Steve, after you read this, let me know if it nudged you more toward theism." And I was like, "Dude, I don't even know what the hell I'm reading. It looks great. I can understand parts of it."
Dude, if you can't understand it, I mean, you have a greater understanding of symbolic logic and all this stuff than I do.
It's modal logic. It's hardcore modal logic, and I'm like, dude, this is like ontological. Have you seen Goodall's ontological argument? It's on that level. I'm like, damn, dude, this is like, Well, that's why he's a PhD, right?
If you actually want a good theistic take on the history of logic, if you go to IVP Academic and get Evans' A History of Western Philosophy, it's not symbolic, it is narrative, because he is actually telling the story of the history of philosophy. Now, it is from a Christian perspective, but at the same time, it's a very underrated book, and I think everybody should actually read it. And I got a secular one from W.W. Norton I think it's called Dream of Reason, which is kind of the secular take on it from the beginning to the Renaissance. Whereas I think Evans covers much more broad. It's from the beginning, from pre-Socratics to postmodernism.
So, Cube, do you want to like unmute? Or you get muted because you're muted. I can't unmute you. You have to do it on your end. You're still muted. You're still muted. Oh, there you go. Now you're not. Now you're not. You can talk. You're not.
Oh shit!
There you go. There you go. Yes. Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on. I hope there's not an echo. Is there an echo?
No.
Okay,
You're
cool,
good.
man. Hey, like I say, man, I've been listening to you guys. Mainly, I've been listening to Steve, and I'm gonna be honest, I've been listening to Steve for the better part of 3 years. And like Steve, he doesn't only talk. He says, "Hey, man, well, da 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 da. We could go look at Dr. Grant Moppy. Da 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 da. Well, you can go look at da da." He does.
But that's just
Listen,
support. That's not saying that I'm right because of them.
Listen. Steve does not just tell you some BS out of the crack of his ass. He will never give you that. Steve is gonna tell you where he got it, where he looked for it, and where you can then seek it out.
Mhm.
I promise you. Listen, I didn't know anything about Dr. Graham Oppie. I didn't know anything about him, but until I read his books, I'm gonna tell you one thing. Dr. Graham Oppie is one of the best when it comes to talking about atheism that I have ever.
I don't know why people don't know more than
ever.
by far.
And see, I'm gonna tell you something, and this is something that a lot of people may not understand. Let me pull up my phone. Oh, here go my phone right here. Here's my phone. This is something crazy that happens on my phone, and this happens probably about 2 times a week. I get a message from Steve. And you know what it says? Hold on. This is gonna make y'all trip. Hold on, this is gonna make y'all trip. I get a message from Steve every time somebody reads this article. I get an update on my goddamn phone when somebody reads this article. It sends me. Hold on, let me go to my email just so y'all can see.
You talk about academia or my blog?
No, the WASP argument that you made.
Okay, so my blog, because you can link to somebody links, like if somebody takes my blog and they link it in a blog, then I get a notification. I get a notification somebody reads my my paper from Academia EU, but I don't know if anybody else can get notifications for that. I really have no idea. Bro,
I get an update from your shit like probably once probably 2 to 3 times a week. I get an update from. I be like, damn. I promise you, bro, because when you brought this out like 2 years ago, and I subscribed to it, I constantly get updates from it.
Oh, I got you. Oh, through the webpage, yeah, through my greatdebatemcommunity.com.
Yeah, constantly.
Yeah.
Because I signed up for the updates. So yeah. Now, I don't know, bro. Like, you on to something, man. Like you on to something.
Well,
man.
I mean, I appreciate it. Like I said, I think my stuff's objective, and I think that anybody can go look at and verify. And I'm so glad that you found Oppie, because look, let me ask you this, Cube. Do you think that Aron Ra knows anything that Oppie has ever written?
See, my thing is this. I love Aron Ra.
I do too. I think he's a wonderful guy, but he's philosophically illiterate.
That's what I was gonna say. He's philosophically inept because he doesn't go far. Now, you have to understand one thing, and let's be fair. Aron Ra is so entrenched when it comes to what he stands on, and we know that. He would not be the man that he was if he were to spend half of his time dealing with philosophy. He would not be the man that he is today. Can we agree with that?
I think there's a pro and con there. One, I do agree that it's good that he has a specific niche that he fulfills. I agree with that. However, I also would argue that if he did get better at philosophy, he would probably fulfill his niche even better.
Okay, so are you telling me that he would be as great as he is when it comes to...
Well, this is a good axiological argument, actually.
Let's be honest here.
I'm thinking. You see me pondering, right? I'm pondering there because, I mean, you're making an axiological value.
There's no way that he can do what he do and spend the amount of time that he does what he does and also spend a portion of his time in philosophy there's no way that he can
Yeah, no,
spend
I mean
any
that's
amount of time in philosophy.
obviously a valid point to be raised. But okay, let me give you a pushback on that though. Assuming that's the case, because it's a good axiological argument. Does that mean he has the right to tell other people that I'm wrong? Because he wrote a whole blog on me, and he got so many things wrong that I said. He got my arguments wrong. He literally said things in there that just was not the case. Which I was like, dude, that's not cool, man. Look, but somebody says, hey, Aron holds this position and he doesn't, or Aron has this and he doesn't. I'm going to give that guy pushback, right?
But see, watch this though. But see, what you also have to understand is Aron is wrong when it comes to what you're talking about, and what's his name? Matt Dillahunty is also wrong. But see, the difference is when it comes to Aron can make an excuse like, "Hey, I'm dealing with something totally different when it comes to philosophy." Now, when it comes to Matt Dillahunty, he has no excuse. He has no excuse on why he's.
I'm on board with that.
Matt Dillahunty has no excuse because I'm gonna tell you, I was a Dillahuntyite. I was a Dillahuntyite when I first came into atheism, and I used to watch the atheist experience, and then I began to study philosophy, and I was like,
same, bro.
Nah, that doesn't make sense. And I began to talk to some of my other brothers and sisters when it came to atheists, and I'm like, that don't make sense. And they would then repeat what Matt Dillahunty would say, and I'm like, but that doesn't make sense.
Thank you. You're absolutely 100% right on that.
They would repeat what Matt Dillahunty would say, and I'm like, yo, this doesn't make sense because of X, Y, or Z. And I would repeat some of the things that you would say. Not that I would just repeat them, but I would vet them through. Listen, I would go through.
I like people that vet.
Listen, I would literally go through the philosophy. I would go through the philosophy dictionary. I would go through these things. The AEP. I would go through these things. And I've studied this, and I was like, hold on, this doesn't make sense. And it was like, well, Matt Dillahunty says it, so it must make sense. And I'm like, no, how does that make sense?
Well, didn't they say, you know how many times people used to quote me, well, Matt Dillahunty gumball, right? Gumball argument. And so I wrote a blog. Did you ever read The Gumballs and God? I recommend to everybody, go find the essay on my blog called Gumballs and God Better Explained. And it explains the gumball analogy properly, because I think Matt Dillahunty uses the gumball analogy improperly. I think he uses it for his own, things, but he doesn't exactly explain to people correctly. I believe that I do. But how many times people will say, well, Matt Dillahunty gumballs. I'm like, oh yeah, but he's not quite explaining it right. Let me explain it to you better. Or how many people have said, hey, Matt Dillahunty says agnostic atheism, makes sense. I'm like, yeah, he did for years, like 10 years. And then now he thinks that whole diagram is crap, right? He changed his position. So what happened to the people that just cited him because he's Matt Dillahunty? Oh, well, Matt Dillahunty says, I'm like, that's not an argument. That's not a counter to my argument. Matt Dillahunty has come around and agreed with me now. He just won't give me credit for it. But he'll always say, well, he'll say this. The closest I've ever heard him say was on Twitter. No, wait, it's Twitch. On Twitch, he said, one thing the agnostics get right is that agnostic atheism is nonsensical. That's how he worded it. Very similar to that. One thing the agnostics get right. He didn't say Steve McRae. I was like, you little bitch, right? I was like, yeah, you can't even say my name that I got it right. He had to go out of his way to say one thing the agnostics get right. I'm like, who the fuck are the agnostics? I don't know.
Some ironclad pride.
Oh, that right? That was like, oh my God.
Hey, can I mention something?
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
I mentioned earlier, up until 3 weeks ago, I was on the outside looking in. And one thing that I do, I spend a lot of time alone. I'm not working right now because, physical and stuff, issues, whatever. But anyway, with my change of position, I've been spending a lot of time, thinking on why.
I'll be right back.
All
I'll be right back.
Yeah, thank you, bud.
And with me being outside looking in, I came in at an opportune time because the people are drawn to Steve that say they're atheists. I've seen that they have fought for the clarification of proper tenets of the atheistic belief. Okay. Now, if I would have came in 5 years ago when y'all was bickering and debating over all that, I'd been like, I'll just stay a young Earth creationist. Forget all that.
So
trash.
it wasn't me that caused schisms in the atheist community because everybody's like, "Oh, you're just harming."
No. It's a collective effort.
It's funny though because some people are like, "Oh, Steve, you harm atheism. You drive people to theism." I'm like, where? I go. Excuse me, but I believe that I've done the opposite. I think I've actually brought more people to atheism than in anything.
Nah, dude, you're a theist, bro.
I'm a theist, clearly. Yeah. I get that all the time, right? You must be a theist. I'm like, then why am I convinced? Why are people becoming hardcore atheists because of me? I don't know. It's like, come on.
Well, I was in a live stream the other day, and Ken Hovind got brought up. Okay, and I was following Ken Hovind as a young Earth creationist. I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid. I wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid
all up in that
Kool-Aid. Much. I was watching because as a young Earth creationist, he had information that tickled my interest. Okay, sure. But what I noticed is he just kept regurgitating the same crap over and over and over. I was like, there's got to be more to this than what he's just saying. Because like when Steve sent me that debate between Ken and Dr. May, holy cow, my brain was blown by what I was fast forwarding through. Ken Hovind's
did May debate? Wait, May didn't debate Hovind. May debated Jensen.
I thought he would. No, you said
Dr. May debated Jensen. It was Aron Ra and Hovind.
I have to go back and look.
Yeah, and if you really want to get the Aron Ra versus Hovind debate, you really have to go 5 years ago on the hold on, what was the name of your show that you had?
This is what you're on right now, the Non-Sequitur Show.
Yeah.
It's still the same show. It's just the
Non-Sequitur Show.
The other co-host is gone.
Yeah, from when he was saying pine trees and
elephants. Yeah.
That was the show. I'll never forget that.
You don't even know where you're
This was 2018. This was 2018 when I first discovered Aron Ra when he.
Cube, you're on the Non-Sequitur Show right now.
my bad.
Do you know where you are? Yeah, no, you're right. But the pine trees and elephants and that was one of the greatest things ever.
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, I just went back and I rewatched a lot of that debate. I do it every so often, just like I watch Pine Trees and Elephants with G-Man Cat and G-Cat. It's hilarious. I don't know if you ever seen the G-Cat episode, the Hangout.
Yeah.
One of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. But go back and watch that debate with Aron Ra and Hovind, and you should. I think people watch it every year. I think that's one of my all-time favorite debates.
I've got most of those.
Hey, my bad, Steve. I thought I was on your show. No, man. My bad. I thought I was on your show.
No, we're streaming.
If you want to actually get a real, if you want to see a really funny, well, not haha funny, but kind of a sad funny debate, is the debate between Inspiring Philosophy and Kent Hovind on the meaning of Genesis.
Oh God.
Inspiring Philosophy.
Dude.
But
inspiring to that guy.
Inspiring Philosophy smoked Kent Hovind.
Shocker.
He smoked him. But here's the thing: is like one of the things that he brought up was Klaus Visterman. Klaus Visterman wrote a commentary on. Actually, wrote a continental commentary on Genesis. And I'm like, anybody that wants to say they are some sort of authority on Genesis would know Klaus Visterman, because he wrote he was a Christian, and he also wrote the most influential commentary on Genesis in the 20th century. And so when that was brought up, and then there was other things like there was other scholars brought up as well, Christian scholars by that matter, that deal with this stuff. He got the guy got flustered, and I'm like, dude, if you're gonna try and be some great theologian, Kent Hovind, in my mind, I'm like, You should know this stuff.
You know why I don't talk about theology in the Bible? Because I don't know fuck all about theology in the Bible.
Well, you know, I get that.
I leave that for Lawrence, man. He's my go-to guy for that.
Well,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, oh yeah, what is his name? John Walton. He wrote introductions into some of those topics. And
I know the name. I never
more.
read his work. I never read anything by him though. But
Yeah, but it's all good. I'm not telling you to read them or not read them. But what I am saying is that debate, when you go into that, it's like, I'm like, Kent Hovind. Kent Hovind. Kent Hovind. You are the one. You're one of the guys that has caused a lot of damage with your type of fundamentalism.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I had a chance to sit down with my priest, and one of the things we actually discussed is, look,
wait, who?
There's a priest.
Oh,
I have a priest.
I thought you were like Grand Priest. I was like, I've only talked to him once. He's a very well-known philosopher.
Yeah, my priest is a historian, and we even had a chance to sit down and look at. There are some issues of there's some fundamentalism that has popped up in the Eastern Church, and I was like, thankfully we actually have squashed that for the most part. But what is really upsetting to me is that, again, Kent Hovind and the fundamentalists like him have actually poisoned the well so much that it takes me that much. It could take me almost 30 minutes to disarm a person before they will even listen to me.
That's Brandolini's law in action right there. By the way, Q, when you were a religious person, were you ever Young Earth Creationist, or you just skipped that part?
Oh, of course you were.
Hovenite?
No, listen, I'm gonna tell you something.
Yeah.
I was a Black Hebrew Israelite to where, yeah, 100%. But I'm gonna tell you something. I actually watched like two or three of your streams, and this is where I came across Aron Ra, and then once I saw that, I was like, hold on, this doesn't make sense. Why is this God stuff not making sense when it comes to science?
That's awesome.
Like, whoa, I'm like, hold on. And then I start to look at it, and I'm like, hold on, this doesn't make sense. And then I had to understand. I'm like, I can no longer believe.
Is so incredible, man.
Same damn thing.
Did you real quick? Did you ever listen to my discussions with G-Man on Black Hebrew Israelites? Because G-Man knows his shit on it.
I listened to. No. By the time I listened to your discussion with G-Man, I had already listened to the discussion with Aron Ra and G-Man, and it was already over.
Yeah, because look, G-Man may not know a goddamn thing about biology or philosophy, but he does know. I give him full props.
The Bible.
He knows the Bible. He does know the Bible, and he knows Black Hebrew Israelites really well. That's something I cannot take away from the man. Okay, I can't.
Yeah,
it was already over by that time. It was over by that time.
Cool.
Now, let me say this real quick. And I want to say this to you, bruh. If you can, please continue to teach what you teach, because you have given me something that a lot of people really don't aspire to deal with. Like what you deal with, because you claim that you're not an atheist, which I say bullshit. That's just me personally. I really think you're an atheist.
I'll let slide on it, sure.
But whatever, you say you're not an atheist, but whatever. But the way how you put it together, I look at you as an atheist. You say you're not an atheist, but the way how you chop it up and the way how you put it together, come on, man.
What?
Come home.
Come home. It's so funny. I'm not even offended.
I agree. Definitely come home.
Hang on.
But,
I'm not even offended.
He's an agnostic.
I'm not even offended. I'm really not. Because here's the thing. When it comes to the sciences, I'm sure we agree 100%. When it comes to the fact we know the Earth is not flat, we know the Earth is not 7,000 years old. This is knowledge. This is not just a belief. I know. I will claim knowledge on this. But here's the thing. All the other stuff is really secondary if you understand the underlying stuff, and you clearly understand the underlying stuff. And what happens is when I get like somebody like Elliot, and this is why I wanted to have it. There's a distinction to be made here. Look at the conversation we have with Elliot, and look what the conversation with somebody who knows what they're talking about. We don't have to agree, but There's a huge difference there. And that's what I want people to get to. Elliot is before, you're after, right? You're the after of what you could be if Elliot actually would start learning this stuff and people stop just appealing to Matt Dillahunties of the world and stop funding the ACA and get rid of the atheist experience because they're no longer of any value. They've lost any value they've ever had. And so if you want to actually learn about atheism, that's not the place to do it. Matter of fact, how many times do you think any of them have ever talked about any of the atheist philosophers? Like you had mentioned about knowing the people that wrote about Genesis. If you're talking about atheism and you don't know who Oppie is, Draper, McCormick, Mackey, right? You don't know any of those names, not a single one of them. What the fuck do you know about atheism?
Dude, I didn't hear anything about that until later.
Listen. Let me tell you this. When it comes to every single person that you just mentioned, I never learned anything about. I never learned anything about any of these people.
They don't talk about it.
Listen. I'm gonna tell you something.
I'm talking about in like the ACA kind of thing.
Go ahead, Q.
Like
I'm gonna tell you something. Hold on. Let me tell you. Let me tell you something. I've never read any books that the ACA ever tell me because they've never given me any books to read. But I'm gonna guarantee you one thing: what this dude has done, he said, "Oh, look at Graham Oppie, what he's done. Look at all of these people, such and such." He's giving me books to where I actually had to look into and had to say, "Damn, what does this person have to say?" And they don't always agree with my what I think. But they have always come with a position to where it makes you look at you have to readjust your position on what actually is. And see the ACA and how Matt Dillahunty and his former self, because the Matt Dillahunty of today, this very second, is not the Matt Dillahunty of a year ago.
I agree.
That's a totally different Matt Dillahunty, if you really want to be honest.
I think you're absolutely right.
That's a totally Matt Dillahunty.
I'll give you another book you might want to read. It's by J.L. Mackey, if you haven't looked at it, called The Miracle of Theism: Arguments for and Against the Existence of God. It has consolidated theist and atheist arguments, and he's an atheist. I mean, Mackey's dead, but he was a very, very prominent atheist philosopher. But the Miracle of Theism is a gold standard book if you want to get into the theist arguments, and the ontological arguments, the cosmological arguments, and things of that nature. It is a masterpiece of book. It's not an easy read. It's dense, but it's not like dense like Necessary Existence. That book is super dense. This, I mean, it's still something that's apprehendable. I highly recommend The Miracle of Theism. But again, you ask the atheist, well, what papers have you read on atheism? They look at you like a doe in a headlight. Like, what are you talking about? Don't tell me they don't exist.
But see, this is the crazy part because you know what you say all the time. You know what you say all the time. You say, "Hey, listen, I'm not the greatest. I'm not like a super." You say, "Well, I just know a little bit about this, but this is what it is." And that little bit is enough to make people just venture out and look at it.
That's my whole platform. Is that I'm a layperson. As a layperson, yes, if I can understand it, anybody can. That's my whole shtick.
Exactly. You are a layperson, and this is why I can connect. This is why I can connect with you. This is why I can connect, because you are a layperson, the same way I'm a layperson. The same way that when I look at my sister or my brother and I'm an atheist and I want them to understand that I'm a layperson, they can understand and connect with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a layperson also. I can't give them Dr. Oppie's thesis when he graduated. I can't give them that.
Oh, I've read some Oppie stuff that I read a paper from Oppie that I was like, I don't even know what the subject even is to even address it.
Right.
He's like,
right.
But I'm okay with this.
One of the biggest things I've learned since when I first was exposed to the Non-Sequitur Show about 2.5 years ago, I wanted to get in chat and say some mean things. But, I kept my mouth shut and I listened, because I learned one thing from Steve is that if you lack logic anywhere, you're wrong. In some way, shape, or form. Because I was a young Earth creationist, and I realized that under that belief, there is a proponent of not a lack of knowledge, but not willing to acknowledge the logic necessary for your belief.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's illogical to be a young Earth creationist when phylogeny exists.
I don't
blows
know.
it out of the water.
I don't think it's mostly. Get it back in. I don't think it's so much illogical. It's just, I think it's I would call it epistemically untenable. There's a difference, right? Because if you say something's illogical, you're literally saying there's a contradiction of sorts. I think when you say it's epistemically untenable, it means that if there's a body of evidence, this is called the, I think it's, what is it called? I'll tell you in a second. It's a thesis on this. But basically it says that if there's a sufficient body of evidence, that it would be almost perverse to have any other disposition other than believe it's true or believe that it's false. For example, like flat earth. It is perverse to hold flat earth true. It is perverse, epistemically untenable, because all the evidence against it, right? So it's called the uniqueness theorem. The uniqueness theorem or principle in epistemology is basically saying there is a unique disposition for sufficient evidence of body work that not to hold the position that is true or is false is untenable. And it makes sense, though. Think about it. If you run across a flat earther, we all believe the earth is not flat. We all believe the earth is, round.
The globe, yeah.
Yeah. To not have that position is epistemically untenable. Why? Because the body of evidence is so great that there's only one reasonable, rational position for it, right? Because it's so great. There's no evidence for flat earth. There's just none. They make it all up. So I think that, to me, when there's such a degree of like that, then to me, I've gotten to the point where I used to think almost any position can be justified given sufficient reason. But I don't know if I really hold that with flat earth, because I don't know what justification they were to have to be rational unless they're ignorant of the subject. Like a child will say, Santa Claus exists. They're not being irrational. I don't think they're being rational. They could be irrational, but they're not being some kind of irrational. They're saying, hey, look, my parents told me Santa exists. I trust them. Because I trust them, I have some kind of reasons to believe that Santa exists. Okay, we don't accept that because we understand why that's a problem. But to a child, they might be able to rationally, in some way, justify it.
But wouldn't they have to use some type of logic that we don't really understand? They would have to be using some type of logic that we don't understand.
I think it's logic. I think it's just reason. What it is they're depending upon their parents. This is what I mentioned earlier about rebutting an argument and cutting what's called undercutting the argument. If you could kind of give a rebuttal why something doesn't exist to a child, they might have some revisionism, but it may not necessarily.
But a rebuttal doesn't mean that the logic actually makes sense.
But here's the thing: if I undercut that, if the child learns that the parents lied to them, that undercuts the argument, because now you've undercut the actual reason why they have some kind of belief. They're relying on their parents. So you're not just giving rebuttal, you undercutted the foundation of their belief because they predicated their belief on something else. They predicated their belief about Santa because their parents, who they trust, told them that Santa exists. Now, if you undercut them and the child knows that the parents are liars, now they might have some belief revision because you undercut the foundation for that belief. And that's the same thing should go with religion.
Yeah. Well,
what logic is that called? Is that called modal logic? What logic is that?
It's epistemic logic, maybe, if you want to call it that. Epistemic logic.
But how is that epistemic logic, though? I'm
because you could write it. You could write it as B if B is predicated on A, right? It's called a
I'm listening. It's not making sense.
It's a certain word. I want to be specific. I haven't looked in this in a while. But if you just say B is predicated on A, right? It's somehow contingent upon A.
If B equals A.
Well, not equals, but if B is predicated on the belief of A. If I say my belief for Santa being real is predicated that my parents are honest and they don't lie to me, so that belief is somehow related to A, right? It's predicated on that belief because beliefs are predicated upon each other. And they don't have to be deductive, right? It's not a deductive entailment. It's just that my belief foundation of why I believe that Santa exists as a child would have been predicated on the belief that my parents would never lie to me. So if I undercut the belief that the parents are telling the truth, now I have to reform the belief of my belief in Santa. The same thing should be done for religion, I think.
Yeah, one of the things that concerns me greatly with one of the things that concerns me greatly with just the education of a child in this day and age is that they are not taught logic. In fact, I had one parent ask me, how do I get a child to understand this? I'm like, they're only 5, they're only 6, and I'm like, it's simple. Look up Lollipop Logic. It's coloring books. It's some fun things. You can get them to do it with those kind of small games.
Yeah,
it's called Lollipop
if you go
Logic.
on Amazon, they have kids books for critical thinking, and they teach basic small little principles that in digestible ways for children.
To answer his question, I would look into what's called formalism. If you ask what kind of logic it is, it would probably fall under. And again, it's obviously a form of epistemic logic, but I would look at what's called formalism of logic, which would give you the entailments that I'm talking about for belief reform.
And one of the things that
I just want to say before you, I actually had to go look it up because again, he knows I make sure that I put out correct information. It's called a consequence relationship. So the consequence relationship is that because my parents are honest with me, as a consequence of that, I can believe what they tell me if they tell me Santa is real. Does that make sense? It's a consequent relationship. Pretty cool, right? So if you undercut that consequent relationship to show that my parents are liars, then I can reevaluate my belief on Santa. So it's called a consequent relationship in formalism. Cool, right?
Yeah, I would like the 2 books I would recommend anybody get for informal to get a good introduction to informal logic and formal logic and just for the basics is Gensler's Introduction to Logic, and then there's Kreef's Socratic Logic. And the reason why Socratic logic deals with more of the informal stuff. And the reason why is because they're written in such a way that they're digestible. But
can you send those to me?
The Kreef's Socratic Logic and and Gensler's.
Yeah, just link me the link to the titles, and because I want to look at.
Hey Steve. Steve, can you break that down? What like the logic that he's talking about, pre-Socratic and?
Oh no, I haven't read. Well, I mean, I know what Socratic method is, but I don't know the formalities of those 2 books. I haven't read them because I would recommend a book called Calgary's For All of X. For All of X, it's called For All of X. It's a PDF. You can download it. It's from Calgary. What's called Calgary. It's really good. It's really, really easily digestible.
Yeah. The thing about so Gensler. So this goes back to the thing where people think when they say, "Oh, Christians can't be critical thinkers." I'm like, I'm citing 2 very good Christian logicians.
I seriously hate when people say that, bro.
Yeah, well, it's like Doctor, and actually, no, it's not even doctor. I'll call him Father Harry Gensler, who is a doctor of that with a scholar with a PhD in philosophy, wrote the introduction to philosophy, which his introduction is very deductive. It is formal logic, and it also deals. And the great thing about that is it's published in Routledge Publishing. I forgot which one.
What was his name?
Routledge.
What was his name that wrote that?
Harry Gensler.
Okay, yeah. Let me take a look. How do you spell it?
Gensler is GENSLER.
GENF as in Frank or GENS as in Sam?
GENS as in Sam, L as in Lima, E as in Echo, and R as in Romeo.
Okay, cool. Let me take a look.
I want to take a look too. I do got to wrap it up. We could do a later show, maybe the next late week on my other channel, to kind of follow up on some of this logic stuff. Would be really interesting.
What would be really cool is so people can actually get a good grasp and kind of a running bibliography is if we could one day in it, and maybe I'm there, maybe I'm not, I hope I'm there, but is to kind of gather kind of, an overview of some of the good works that beginners can actually go to, so that way they're not getting drowned with a lot of jargon, and they're taught the issues. and then that way they can actually go to the more complex.
Yeah, we've tried compiling
papers.
lists before. I mean, we did that on the Great Debate Community on Facebook. But so, I mean, to kind of wrap it all up, you know, as far as like the topic of the discussion today, you didn't find anything wrong with my argument, my logic. Nobody seems to have any faults with my argument and logic. It's really telling that, you know, I give these people opportunities over and over again. Show me that I'm wrong. Give me evidence. They always say evidence is king, but they never bring any. And yet here we are. We bring evidence. We bring arguments. And yet they always. Somebody even said, "Hey, Steve, do you even make a claim on Facebook?" They're like, "Do you ever claim stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm claiming. Here, I claim all this. You know." It's weird. It's like, seriously, they asked me, do you ever make claims? I'm like, yeah, yes. I'm damn proud of my claims. Here's my argument. I wrote a paper. That's a claim.
No kidding, dude.
Hey, Steve, I have evidence against you right now. You hurt my feelings, so please put that white towel over your shoulder. I need to cry.
I need to cry. You know what's so funny too? They actually do that too. Like, well, Steve, maybe you were nicer and your approach was better. I'm like, look, I don't give a flying fuck about that. Look, I don't have time to play Fifi games. I don't care. You know, I only feel empathy with people and sorrow for them when there's something to be sorrowful for. You know, your dog types, I'm going to be emotional. I love animals, right? I'm going to feel bad for you, right? But if you're just like, well, you could have been nicer how you told me that. I'm like, well, you come at me sideways. You tell me that I'm wrong and that I'm a dumbass, and then you're like, why is Steve being mean to me? I don't know. I swear to God, that's how it gets, though. That's exactly how it is in the Facebook group. They on the Facebook groups, they think I'm some kind of intellectual nitwit. They think that I'm some kind of like dumbass who doesn't understand the basics of the topics. But when I ask them, okay, what have you read? There's nothing to read. It's like, what?
Well, there is. I had. Well, one of the things with it. Well, one of the things with it is with it is like a lot of people, and this goes with fundamentalists, this will go with hyper secularists, and I call them hyper secularists because they're both, it's just basically two sides of the same coin. You're basically going to
he's muted. What is he? I think he wants to kill you. I think he wants to kill you, Theo. He's like, I'll find where you live. Is that what he's saying?
I'm sorry, but this is a waste of time. I'm sorry. This is a waste of time.
It is running long. I do got to go, Theo. We are running around. I'm trying to wrap this up.
Do your thing.
Yeah. All right. So, anyways, Q, are you following me on Twitter?
No. What's your Twitter so I can follow you right now?
Steve McCrae @Steve McCrae, and then put an underscore.
At
Steve
at
MCREE _.
Okay. All right.
And so that way I keep a communication with you. So I mean, to wrap it all up, I wanted people to recognize that I offered a discussion to people, right? You saw what happened. One person did come in, which was from G's group. You saw how bad that went because I'm not going to be sitting there wasting my time with people that don't want to have an honest discussion. And obviously Elliot wasn't having an honest discussion. I just could not get him to answer a simple question. If you're running into people like that, move on. Look how much better the discussion went when we went with people, you know, that actually wanted to have a discussion and want to talk and were able to communicate their position. I could tell you right now, I can ask Q a question and he'll give me a straight answer. He's not going to bullshit me. He's not going to obfuscate. And that's the kind of dialogue that we have in the Great Debate Community on Facebook and the Non-Sequitur Show. We're not interested in the low-level Matt Dillahunty discussions where they just go, I don't believe you, or answer a question with a question, or just say, I don't believe. I don't give a fuck what you don't believe. That doesn't tell me anything about your beliefs. It just doesn't. It's like saying I'm a non-duck. Okay, but what are you? They don't realize this because they're so indoctrinated. And I will leave you guys with this. The new atheist TM movement is, by the way, getting smaller because of the fractions that are happening in the atheist community, and more of the prevalent, more educated atheists are leaving it and recognizing that it's not the way to go. It's the new atheist itself movement, which was the Four Horsemen, has been diminishing for quite some time. And the really diehard radical ones that just say, hey, prove to me your sky daddy exists. Nobody wants to have communications with them anymore. Nobody wants to have a dialogue. It's useless. It's so puerile. It is mind blowing that anybody would waste their time with somebody who will argue on those types of levels. If you want to argue there's no God, absolutely, I'll be happy to have those discussions about why, I've had my position, Chris, why his positions, but we're trying to up the level of the conversation. And I want people to see the difference between before and after, you know, when somebody comes in having conversations, as opposed to Elliot, who's still in that mindset that you guys proclaimed that you had at one time. So you guys are the
your panel proves it. Your panel proves it right here.
I hope so. You have we have three ex-creationists here, and two of them left because of things that I argued.
Hey, before I get out of here, I do want to say this. Steve, man, you've done wonders for me to force me to actually go read and search and study more when it comes to atheism. But I do want this one thing, for you to actually have a conversation, not a debate, but a conversation with Tom Jones.
I talk to John. We talk all the time. He's going to come on the Non-Sequitur Show. He wants
really?
To he wants to come back on to talk. He's been on before. I mean, I talk to him all the time. Well, not all the time, but I mean, we have conversation. We talk. We had a falling out ages ago, but that's been way under the bridge, and we never, neither one of us care.
Squashed it.
Yeah, there's bigger things out there. And so so T-Jump will be coming on as soon as I find something that's worth having a debate on.
Okay.
But he'll be on. Yeah, and I'll have him
perfect.
On. Yeah, I'll talk.
All right.
Sound good?
Hey, I get the best of both worlds. Beautiful.
Awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you all for watching the Non-Sequitur Show. And do me a favor, everybody who ever watches this video, if you watch this video and you make it to the end, leave a comment in the video section. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought.
I'm following you on Twitter, man. I'm following you on Twitter already.
I'll follow back. The Twitter link is in the video description. But yeah, leave comments.
Hey,
because
everybody.
As you found out, I read your comment, didn't I? I read comments. So that's what I really ask people to do. Leave comments, and I want to get your opinions, and I read every comment. I really do. I go through my comments. It may take me a day to get to them or so, but I do read them. So I like to know what all people think of this. I made the argument that we are not born atheists. If you agree with that, let me know why. If you don't, let me know why. But I really want to know, did I make my burden of proof? And by the way, burden of proof doesn't mean you have to prove anything. It just means you have to justify your position. You don't have to be convinced by it. But did I not make a rational, logical argument that confronts the ACA's belief that we must be theist or atheist and we're all born atheists? Because that's bullshit. No philosophy person I know really agrees with that. Just nobody. Boulevard maybe, but he's a theist. It doesn't count, no offense. But as far as atheist philosophers, that's all bullshit. There's no university that teaches you must be theist or atheist and we're born atheist. Matter of fact, I will leave you this. Do you guys remember Aron Ra had to go back to the 18th century to find somebody to argue that babies were atheists? 18th century, and it was a polemicist. It was a polemicist that wasn't even taken seriously. He was a grenade thrower, and he wasn't a good polemicist. He wasn't like Voltaire, or he wasn't like Jonathan Swift. You want polemicist, and you want to be a satirist? Go read some Jonathan Swift. You know, A Modest Proposal. Brilliant.
Hey man, you better leave Aron Ra alone, man. Leave Aron Ra alone, man.
Aron, I love your brother. Aron, I know he'll never talk to me again. But leave him alone. But no hard, you know.
Get off my boy Hitchens, man.
Hey, I gotta go. I'm hungry and I gotta get bathroom, so I'm gonna end the stream.
Yeah, I'm hungry.
I'm gonna leave the stream yards. So thank you guys for joining tonight. Seriously, man, you guys made my night. Okay. All right. Good night.
Peace out, brother. Peace out.
All right. With that, guys, I would never. I'll never have a true sign off if I didn't leave there. So, guys, thank you for once again. These words were very kind to me. It made me feel really. It really did. It affected me that people actually have listened to me and changed their positions. I mean, not a lot of people can say that, especially when it's something that you've talked about for a very long time. I'm humbled by it, and I hope that people continue to. If you got questions, just message me. I'm happy to answer questions, and hopefully we'll have G-Jump on maybe in the next week or two. That'd be pretty cool. All right, guys. With that, thanks for watching, and good night.